In the United States, there are approximately 554,000 homeless people, or about 0.17% of the total population. By comparison, Russia has approximately 5 million homeless people, or 3.4% of the population, and Germany has 800,000 homeless, or 0.5% of the population. While Russia tops the charts on homelessness for first world nations, the true chart topper is Egypt, with between 1 and 3 million homeless children alone. But have you ever wondered what it would be like to be homeless? Well, wonder no more as we dive into another special challenge episode of the Infographics Show, and once more put our favorite guinea pig to the test for your scientific curiosity and task him with going homeless for 72 hours. Day 0. Okay, I probably should have been more prepared for this by now, but this challenge definitely caught me out of the blue. I've done, I think, maybe 20 challenges by now, and I should definitely have seen this one coming. Homeless for 3 days? Part of me is kind of excited because at least it's not a disgusting challenge, and, well, it kind of feels like an urban version of man versus nature, right? There's a reason why there's so many of those wilderness survival shows on TV. I think deep down inside, we all crave to know if we could really make it out there. Now, the urban landscape isn't exactly the wilderness, but I know for a fact it can be pretty rough. I used to work security in Las Vegas for a little bit over a decade ago, and I had to deal with the homeless population pretty frequently. Once we even had one homeless woman stab another homeless woman through the eye for apparently infringing on her territory because she was turning tricks at the casino I worked at. So yeah, I'm pretty well aware of the potential dangers of homelessness. When your survival comes down to working a turf of your own, well, it's no different than in the wild when prides of lions kill each other over the best hunting territory. Whether you're begging for loose change or turning tricks, holding and securing the ideal turf and protecting it at all costs can literally be the difference between life and death. Still, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I'm kind of excited to give this challenge a go. I have wilderness survival training from my past in the military, but there's a difference between a jungle or forest and the city streets. In a way, it actually seems more dangerous in city streets than it would ever be in the wild with a bunch of wild animals. I definitely trust wild animals more than I trust humans. So for this challenge, I'm going to do the real deal. I'll be leaving home with no money in my pocket and will be dropped off way on the other side of Los Angeles because I feel I should be in unknown territory, but also so I won't run into anyone I know. I'm taking the clothes on my back, 2 other changes of clothes in the backpack, and a bottle of water. I didn't want to take my phone with me, but the girlfriend begged and pleaded to take it just for emergencies, and I agreed. But I'll keep it turned off unless I run into an emergency I really can't handle on my own. I won't be taking a sleeping bag or anything like that. I'll have to scrounge for shelter, and with no money in my pocket, I'll be looking for ways to make some cash or, I guess, find some food. There's gotta be about 1 billion legal liabilities regarding this whole challenge, but then again, this is the same show that made me not take a shower for a month and forced me to watch YouTube videos for 24 hours straight. I'm pretty sure the Allies sent a ton of Nazis to the gallows for similar inhumane experiments on concentration camp victims. I'll be updating at the end of my experience, but keep track of my days for later on pen and paper since I won't be taking a laptop, just a notebook and a few pencils. This challenge officially starts tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. when I'll be getting dropped off near downtown Los Angeles to begin my life as a homeless person. Wish me luck, and I'll see you in 72 hours. Unless I get stabbed to death with a rusty shank. End of day 3. This is the end of my first and hopefully last bout of homelessness. And what an experience it's been. I don't want to get ahead of myself because I feel a million thoughts rushing up, so I'll just start back at the beginning. Like I planned, I got dropped off at 5 a.m. very near to downtown Los Angeles. But I didn't get breakfast and hadn't eaten since the night prior. Seemed only fair to start this challenge off with my first task being securing food. In case you don't remember, I didn't bring any money with me, and I had to figure out a way to feed myself. Well, I pretty quickly got a chance to do just that when I was walking past a 7-Eleven not far from where I'd gotten dropped off at. They were loading in pastries for the morning breakfast rush, but the truck driver and the 2 employees were inside and had left 2 racks of treats waiting to get pulled inside by the back door. Now, I consider myself a very honest person, and I've never so much as shoplifted a candy bar. I think stealing is a pretty glaring moral shortcoming, to be honest. But I reminded myself that I'm temporarily living a new life, and had to start looking at things from the perspective of someone who didn't know where his next meal was coming from. Mostly because, I didn't know where the hell my next meal was coming from. So I pried the plastic aside and swiped 2 donuts. Took like 3 seconds and I was well on my way down the block by the time anyone stepped out of the store. One thing they teach you during survival training is to exploit literally any advantage or windfall that you can. And I realized that after my donut heist, I started looking at the world in entirely different ways. I wasn't just a pedestrian walking along minding my own business anymore. I was actively watching my environment and looking for things I needed: food, water, shelter. The more time I spent on the streets, the more keen this instinct became, and eventually I realized that I was behaving the same way I'd had years and years ago in the middle of a northwest forest during survival training. Our regular lives are so insulated from the actual necessities of life, the things we need to keep ourselves safe and biologically alive, that when it's all stripped away, it's kind of a refreshing but extremely jarring experience. So my homeless strategy was to try and gradually make my way over toward the eastern half of Los Angeles from downtown. I thought that starting at downtown would be my best initial exposure to the whole homeless lifestyle, because I got dropped off literally just a few blocks from LA's infamous Skid Row. This is a few blocks of downtown city streets that are completely awash with the homeless and some serious crime, and I wanted to experience what life was like there. But I wanted to keep on the move because it's probably not safe to hang around too long in Skid Row without knowing all the street rules. I spent most of the first day around Skid Row, and I could already tell that trying to scrounge or even panhandle for money would be an absolute no-go here. There's just very little local traffic that isn't other homeless people or gang members, and anyone driving through is doing so with windows rolled up and car doors locked, and with very good reason. I wanted to stay on the move and not get wrapped up in any potential trouble, especially because I was drawing a lot of attention. I stupidly realized that I was drawing all this attention because I didn't look homeless. I was too fresh, my clothes too clean. I was standing out like a sore thumb, and believe me, that's not something you want to do on Skid Row. So I ducked into the nearest alley and rubbed my hands on the ground and then rubbed dirt on my face, hair, and clothes. I tore my jeans and shirt up a little bit, not much, but enough that it didn't look any more like I was wearing frequently laundered clothes. The trick worked, and I quickly stopped getting stares and looks, which was good because not long after I ran into a group of 3 guys shaking down other homeless people. They stared me down at first, but I guess I was too young and in too good a shape for them to figure I was an easy mark, and they ignored me, moving along to 2 other homeless men. They kind of dug through their assembled, well, what would be normally trash to you and me, but to them was all their belongings. But I guess they didn't find anything valuable and quickly went on their way. I had already learned the first rule of being on the streets: the strong shake down the weak, and the weak band together to fend off the strong. I've watched a ton of nature documentaries, and it was amazing how similar to wild animals people really are. The first day I got really lucky and ran into a mission that was serving out hot meals at night, which was good because I'd gone totally bust on finding food all day. I'm not naive, and I knew that getting into what is essentially a survival situation means doing what it takes to survive, but the problem is that in this area there's no restaurants, supermarkets, nothing where you might be able to scrounge for food, and with no foot traffic, panhandling was not an option. I got offered a place to stay the night at the mission, but I declined it and figured somebody in poorer health or older could probably use the place more than me. There was certainly not a lack of people in really bad shape. I struck east at night and ended up on the outskirts of downtown. I jumped a fence into an office park and managed to sleep for a few hours in an alcove by the loading dock to one of the buildings. Since the next day was Saturday, I knew nobody would be showing up for work. I've slept in the wilderness a ton before, sometimes without a sleeping bag, but knowing how close I was to Skid Row and everything I'd seen during the day, it was hard to get any sleep. The next day I was practically starving, having only eaten 1 bowl of soup and 2 donuts the day before. Also, my water was out. Finding a public restroom to refill my water bottle was easy enough, and I made up my mind to find a supermarket to go scrounge for food at. When I was a kid, one of my first jobs was at a supermarket, and I know for a fact that they throw away a ton of food still wrapped up and perfectly good for eating. I found 3 different supermarkets, but all of the bins were practically empty. And then I realized it was just too early in the day. Typically, food gets thrown out around the afternoon. I didn't feel like waiting that long to eat, so I decided to answer a question that I've always wondered about. Just how much can you really make from panhandling? I found a promising spot with a lot of foot traffic and set up shop using a can I found in a dumpster. I made a grand total of 35 cents before a police car pulled up on the street in front of me and just sort of looked at me disapprovingly. I got the message and honestly didn't feel like adding a night in lockup to this challenge, so I left and moved on. Next, I found a spot right on a freeway off-ramp because I'd seen homeless people set up at spots like this all the time. It worked like a charm, and in an hour I had already made $3.50. Not exactly a king's ransom, but I was getting closer to be able to afford food again. Then 2 homeless guys started cursing and yelling at me because apparently I had taken their spot. Remember what I told you about being territorial? I left because I didn't want any trouble. But I'm going to be really honest with you here. If I were actually homeless, I know I would have stayed. I would have stood my ground and defended that spot with violence if I had to, because I had made over 10 times as much money there in an hour than I had at my previous spot. When you don't know where your next meal is coming from, prime real estate is a critical commodity. It also made sense why two guys worked that spot, with one working while the other rested, but also so that the two of them could better defend it against anyone intruding. Again, it's amazing how similar we are to wild animals. My good luck continued when I set up shop near the drive-thru to a fast food joint, and one of the employees actually called me over to the drive-thru window when they're not busy and gave me an entire meal in a bag. Now, I've done my fair share of small kinds of deeds in my life, but I guess you never really appreciate just how much impact even something as small as buying someone a sandwich can have, until you're on the receiving end. I was absolutely starving by then, and I had barely $4 to my name. That meal was a godsend. In the late afternoon, I made my way to the previous supermarkets but found other scroungers already there. I guess they'd figured out the schedule a long time ago, and I didn't feel like getting into another confrontation, so I skipped the first two supermarkets and hit the third one where there was only one other guy. With 3 dumpsters back there, we agreed he could have the one on the far left, I'd take the one on the right, and the one in the middle we'd split. I managed to find a Subway sandwich tray completely sealed in plastic that had been tossed, and after seeing that the expiration date hadn't yet come due, I honestly couldn't tell why it'd been trashed in the first place. With a pretty substantial meal in hand, I let the other guy have the middle dumpster and what was left in mine, and he thanked me. As I sat eating, I thought about 2 things. The first being that I couldn't figure out why this perfectly wrapped up Subway sub tray had been tossed, and it wasn't the only thing. There were several other food items in that dumpster that were completely wrapped up and in perfectly fine shape, but all had gotten tossed. When you picture homeless people dumpster diving for food, you probably think that they're eating gross stuff that's slimy and moldy and covered in unmentionable grime. But the truth is that the food you bring home from the market is exactly the same stuff that they eat. Yet some of it is expired, but expired definitely does not mean that most of the food is even close to starting to rot. It's an arbitrary date that I believe the FDA helped come up with. Most of the food, though, isn't anywhere close to the expiration date, but it might have some kind of unwanted visual blemish. For instance, it took me a bit, but I finally realized why my tray of sub sandwiches had been tossed. The top part of the plastic case had a large dent in it, and then it all made sense. How many times have you been at a supermarket and ignored the plastic tray of food because it had an unsightly dent in it? We all do it literally all the time, and with so much selection available to us, why take something so unsightly when we can get a tray that's perfectly unblemished instead? It's kind of insane, and from now on, I've vowed to not overlook food items just because the packaging isn't perfect. The second thought I had was the difference between the homeless people I kept running into. The guy behind the supermarket was kind and polite, but the ones by the freeway off-ramp had definitely been aggressively protecting their territory. I guess it's about survival, but we're not all truly like wild animals. Some of us retain our humanity and cooperate, even help others. One guy I ran into on my second night, for instance, showed me where to refill my water bottle after all the places with public restrooms had closed down. He showed me where to get safe, clean water when I'd been planning on drinking the sprinkler water that is clearly labeled not for drinking. They do that so homeless people won't get sick. But you know what? When it's been a 100-degree day and you don't have many options available to you, you have to risk it sometimes. I managed to reach a rail yard on the second night, so I spent the night under a train car. I've read stories before of homeless people being crushed to death by moving train cars while they slept underneath them, so I made sure that this cart was totally disconnected from anything else and was on a piece of sidetrack that was just out from the main line. Other than a train whizzing by in the middle of the night and scaring the piss out of me, almost literally, my night was pretty uneventful. By my third day, I managed to reach East Los Angeles, and that meant that the neighborhoods were nicer, and so was the general look and demeanor of the people. I learned from my first day and got up early enough to find a local 7-Eleven. Sure enough, an hour or so before sunrise, a truck showed up and started offloading pastries to sell to the morning breakfast crowd. Again, I'm no thief, but I was living temporarily in a different world, and when you're in a survival situation, there's only one rule: survive. Maybe it was because I was a lot hungrier than on the first day, or maybe because I finally knew how difficult finding food was and that I wasn't guaranteed a meal that day, but instead of snatching 2 donuts, I snatched as much as I could carry without being caught, then just slipped away. I was 100% breaking the law, but I was also in survival mode, and to be honest, it was a little exhilarating, but mostly I was just hungry. The nicer neighborhoods meant nicer people, and I made over $10 in about 5 hours of panhandling, which gave me almost $15 total, or the ability to buy 1 meal. That's kind of discouraging, especially if you consider having to do this every day for weeks or months, or even years on end. It makes sense why homeless people are so protective of the good panhandling spots though, and it really becomes hard to judge the two that chased me away a day before. Once more, this is about survival and I totally understand. My day was uneventful and mostly just boring. I made my way steadily eastward throughout the day, stopping at a fast food place to get a bite to eat. I ran across a library for the first time in decades, and I went inside to spend a few hours just reading their books. I got looks from people, and honestly, it soon got really annoying. It wasn't just the library though. Throughout this experience, normal people have been giving me looks like I was untrustworthy or like I was up to no good or even a potential threat. It was really dehumanizing at one point, and the irony that in reality I'm a productive member of society that regularly pays his taxes and has a nice apartment only made things worse. These people literally knew nothing about me and had no idea that I was secretly one of them, but they treated me like I was basically a criminal. For the third night, I decided that I wanted to sleep a bit easier than I've been because by this point I was getting physically exhausted. So since I knew where I was in town, I made my way to a very fancy cemetery in the area with a big tall iron fence and security patrols inside the property. Civilian security is a joke, and I know from my experience in the military that even secure facilities have a weakness. So I just worked my way around the fence line into the tree line until I found a drainage ditch. The fence crossed the ditch, but because of flood risks had a small metal gate that swung outward at the bottom. So during heavy rains, branches and other debris could flow out and not back up at the fence and eventually bring the whole thing down. Even though Los Angeles hadn't had a major rain in over a year, the gates had been, of course, left open, so it was simple enough to just crawl through them. Several thousands of dollars of cameras along the fence line and 2 full-time security patrols completely defeated because some guard had been lazy over a year ago and never closed the drainage gate. Like I said, civilian security is a joke. I kinda kicked the gates closed to keep anyone else from following in and then found a pretty peaceful spot to sleep undisturbed until morning. Sadly, no ghosts or zombies appeared, but I did sleep until well into sunrise and realized that I was supposed to call the girlfriend at 5 a.m. on the dot to let her know where to pick me up and that I was safe. When I turned to my phone, it was already well past 7, and when she picked up the phone, she was furious and also completely distraught. I guess I don't blame her. Last time she saw me was 3 days ago on the outskirts of Skid Row, a place so dangerous they literally make documentaries about how you should never go down there. Then she hadn't heard from me at all. When she finally picked me up an hour later, she told me she had nearly called the cops and yelled at me for not calling at exactly 5 like I promised. In between yelling, she cried. I guess these 3 days were as nerve-wracking for her as they were for me. What did I learn from my experience on the streets? A lot. Too much for this episode, and experienced a lot of things that honestly don't quite fit into the more family-friendly aspect of our show. The biggest thing I learned though is how far small gestures of kindness really go. So when you do one of these gestures for somebody in need, don't ever undervalue just how much that really meant. Buying someone a meal may set you back $10. Not a big deal for the vast majority of us, but for someone hungry who doesn't know where their next meal is coming from, that's hot food in their belly and the stress of finding something to eat relieved for the next 12 hours. You can't put a price on that. The other thing I learned is that living on the streets is dangerous and some people are predators, but a lot of other people aren't. I saw homeless guys giving other homeless guys their spare change or parts of their food. Some kind soul helped me find a drinking source that wouldn't make me sick. Lots of people on the street are looking to take advantage of others and prey on them, but many more are willing to help others out. And underneath that dirt and grime, there's a real person that isn't plotting how to hurt you or steal from you, and that you shouldn't be scared of. Sometimes simply treating them like a normal human being and giving them a little respect is the biggest charitable act you could do. The public bathroom. Is there anything more reviled and disgusting, yet completely frustratingly necessary in our civilization than the communal pot? Study after study have shown that public restrooms are germ factories. And if you've seen some of our own episodes on the subject, then you probably haven't used a public restroom since. But what if that was your only option? What if your sacred porcelain throne was forever out of reach and your only recourse was to use a public bathroom instead? Every single day, every single time. We're once more delving into the deepest scientific mysteries known to man and forcing your favorite and our least important writer to use only public bathrooms for a week straight. Day 1. Thanks, YouTube. Really, I mean it. Thank you so much for feeding the Satanists who run the infographics show even more ridiculous ways to make my life as inconvenient, disgusting, and painful as possible. What's next, YouTube? Challenge: I ate only live hornets for a month straight? I should probably keep my mouth shut and not give infographics any ideas, but I'm pretty sure even they wouldn't go that far. Not gonna lie though, I had second and then third thoughts about that last statement. So here's the thing, my girlfriend used to hate these challenges and sometimes she still does. The no lying for a week pretty much torpedoed our social life, and she made me sleep on the sofa when I couldn't shower for a month straight. But lately she's kind of been enjoying these new challenges. I don't know if she sees it as a payback for all my other shenanigans, but I swear I see the little devil horns growing on her head when I tell her things like, "Hey babe, guess what? I can't use the bathroom in the house for the next week." I swear, she's in cahoots with the infographics staff. Okay, so no house bathroom for a week. I had to sit down and think out the logistics of this one, because obviously this means I'll have to be trying to find a public bathroom every single time I have to use one. The dog gets to pee and poop outside and nobody bats an eye, but I'm pretty sure that if I tried the same thing, someone would call the police. Talk about double standards, it's the exact same stuff. So, in order to make this feasible, I plotted out all the local businesses and their hours of operation. Luckily, I happen to live literally right next door to a 7-Eleven, so popping over next door in the middle of the night for a whiz is no problem. I go in there all the time now for years, so I'm pretty familiar with the guys behind the counter. And I think it'll be no big deal to use the bathroom even in the middle of the night. There's also a Starbucks across the street, which is great because their bathroom is open in the seating area as opposed to the 7-Eleven bathroom, which is in the employees only area. That means I don't have to ask permission at Starbucks, and I've already decided on a cover story for using the bathroom everywhere else. My apartment is undergoing renovations. Luckily for me, I've always been on good terms with the guys who run the 7-Eleven next door, so I'm pretty sure I'll have reliable access to that toilet for emergencies. There is also a gas station across the street, but again, that one's the type where you have to ask for a key, and to be perfectly honest, I think I've been inside it like twice in the last 7 years I've lived here. I think my strategy is going to be to spread out the bathrooms I use so that I don't wear out my welcome anywhere, or at least so people don't think I'm the biggest weirdo on planet Earth. I think the gas station would be good for 2, maybe 3 visits tops though, just because I'm really not familiar with the staff there. There is a large grocery store also across the street, but theirs are also the types of bathrooms you have to ask to use. I go there pretty regularly, but after my wearing women's makeup for a week and the no lying for a week stunts, I'm not sure how welcome I am to be frequenting their bathrooms. They already probably think I'm the weirdest person in town, and I really don't want to add to my reputation. There is thankfully a Carl's Jr. also across the street though, which I can use at any time because they are a 24/7 restaurant and the bathrooms there are also public. Okay, so I have my battle plan and I've plotted out my number 2 locations for the next week. Honestly, doing all this work to figure out where I'm going to be dropping deuces for the next 7 days kind of made me realize that my life is very weird. I can just imagine trying to explain my job to someone. "Oh, how was work this week?" Well, I had to calculate where I was going to do my bathroom business for the last 7 days. You know, normal 9 to 5 stuff. See you guys in a few days. Day 4. Okay, well, I'm not entirely sure what kind of resources Infographics has at its disposal, but I'm really trying to not believe that they have the power to shut down an entire restaurant while simultaneously breaking the toilet in a completely separate venue. Here's the thing, remember how earlier this week I said I was going to use Carl's Jr. and the 7-Eleven for most of my around-the-clock toilet needs? Well, on day 2, the Carl's Jr., which has been happily doing business right across the street for 7 years that I've been living here, suddenly closed up. A sign on the door says that it's closed down for good, and won't you please visit the other location that's only 3 freaking miles away. Talk about a wrench in the plans. But wait, because as our good friend Billy Mays, may he rest in peace, would say, there's more. On day 3, the toilet at 7-Eleven broke. My primary and then my backup locations for round-the-clock toilet access are officially gone. And what's worse is that those were the only 24-hour spots that are open around here. The gas station across the street only leaves the pumps on at night, so no employee inside. I've always loved where we live at because even though it's in the middle of the city, it's in an area that's not too developed with businesses and is mostly residential. That means no traffic and no giant office buildings and all the noise that goes along with city life. Instead, we have parks, trees, grass, and places to play fetch with your dog. It also means that if you're dumb enough to have a job that requires you not to do your business at home for a full week, you're kind of SOL when it comes to late-night bathrooms to use. It's not like I can just go knock on my neighbor's door at 2 a.m. and ask to use the can. So I found a solution for my late night problems, and it's not perfect and I'm not particularly happy about it, but, well, it works for me. I got the inspiration from my dog, and I can bet most of you already know where this is going. See, he gets to pee and poo basically anywhere he pleases as long as it's outside. And like the stupid humans that we are, we've come along behind him and pick up his poop with plastic bags, which really begs the question of who's the actual master in the relationship. No, I'm not going in plastic bags, but believe you me, it's not like the thought didn't cross my mind. Instead, I'm going all natural. There's a large empty lot a short walk across the street from my apartment complex where huge power lines run through. It's fenced off with a low fence and ringed on both sides by houses with their own walls or fences. There's a keep out sign posted there because of the big power pylons and some waterworks plumbing, but I usually ignore it and take the dog in there to throw the ball and let him run around off leash. This is my new bathroom, and it's perfect because the trees at the front that block the line of sight from the field to the road, and it's the perfect place for incognito poos. But I'm not gonna lie, I feel like a criminal sneaking off to drop a deuce in secret and out in public. Again, the dog does it literally every day, but I'm pretty sure it's a criminal offense if I got caught. As far as my regular public restroom use goes though, oh man, it's bad. What is it with people that when they get into a public restroom, they literally lose their damn minds? You can take a normal civilized human being who regularly uses a toilet at home and then stick them in a public restroom, and they can walk away leaving a catastrophe behind. It's like people literally don't understand how to use sinks and turn them on full blast so water goes everywhere, or like they've just had a hand transplant surgery and their pee goes literally everywhere. And don't get me started on the biggest mystery of all. Why in the blue blazes do people not flush their turds after dropping them? What could possibly compel a normal person to drop a deuce in a public toilet and then literally just walk away, like it's the normal thing to do? I get that most public toilets are automatic, which by the way I suspect are only automatic because of this exact problem, but I'm pretty sure your toilet at home isn't automatic. You know how to flush. Why do you have to be this way? But the biggest mystery is when there's no toilet paper in the bowl. That's right, somebody just did their business and then literally just walked away. Just drop and go. No wipe, no flush, just plop and turbo on out of the bathroom. Day 7. I have to hand it to the infographic show because they consistently make me grateful for the things I have in my life by denying me their use. I never fail to appreciate a shower lately after that month-long fiasco of no showers, and I practically tell my phone I love you every morning after a week of no phone use. My home toilet is no different. I don't have an excuse though. I've been deployed before when I was in the military and I'm no stranger to lacking facilities. I guess I've gone soft though because I definitely have not appreciated my toilet as much as I should have. And this week of using nothing but public restrooms has taught me the error of my overprivileged ways. What can I say about my experience? How can I possibly sum this up for you viewers at home? It's equal parts terrible and disgusting. Someone once said that you can judge how civilized a society is by the way they treat their prisoners, but they were dead wrong. Dead wrong. You can judge how civilized a society is by the state of its public restrooms, and the state of America's public restrooms are an absolute nightmare. If aliens came to Earth and wanted to know how enlightened they were, they would step into a public restroom and immediately rush out, laying waste to our entire planet with their death rays just to keep us from spreading into the galaxy. We are Neanderthals who after tens of thousands of years haven't yet figured out what proper bathroom etiquette is. Here's some simple rules based off my observations of public restrooms over the last week. First, flush. If your toilet isn't automatic, hit the flush lever. If it is automatic and it doesn't flush, hit the button. There's always one. Then calmly make your way to the sink and simply turn on the water to a moderate and reasonable pressure. Don't parkour across the stalls and blast the water like you're putting out a 7-story fire. Then, take a single paper towel and dry your hands. Don't rip up every paper towel out of the holder and start to shred it into confetti like you're throwing a bathroom-themed Brazilian carnival. Oh, and if you need a number 2, then for the sake of everyone around you, wipe before you leave. How some people haven't figured this one out yet is beyond me. You're cooped up at home watching your favorite videos on the infographic show. You love the ones where that guy does crazy stunts and challenges. You can't believe the things he gets up to. You're watching the one where he spends 24 hours in the bathtub as his body gets more and more wrinkled and his body gets more sore from lying against the hard edge of the tub. Fortunately, his body doesn't suffer any real ill effects from the super long bath, aside from some oddly loose skin that'll fit back into place perfectly once the body dries out. You're bored without too much to do at home and you wonder, could you top this crazy stunt? You're not going to spend 2 or more days in the bath, so you instead think about what else you can take a bath in. What would it be like to take a 24-hour bath in soda? Would the sugary fizzy substance have a worse effect on your skin, or would it be safe? You're about to find out. You've got a large stockpile of your favorite cola at home and an empty bathtub. After pouring out most of your stash into the bathtub, your tub is filled near the top with a brown, bubbling liquid that doesn't look particularly inviting for bathing, but you're here in the name of science and you go in. When you first get in, you're surprised by a few things. The highly carbonated liquid has a bubbling, tingling sensation. This is going to make it hard to get comfortable because it's like a million little pokes every time a bubble bursts against your skin. It's not painful, but you can imagine this getting very old very quickly. The good news is the soda isn't going to stay carbonated forever, and when exposed to the open air, it'll eventually go flat. No one likes flat soda, but it'll make lying in this bath a lot more comfortable. You're glad you opened a few windows before this experiment because these bottles contain a lot of CO2, and you don't want to inhale all that in a closed space. The other thing that stands out is that the sugar content of the soda is very clear. You can feel a sticky sensation on your skin when you lift your hand out of the tub. And you imagine that when you get out of your extended soda bath, you're going to need another bath to get it all off. When you dip your hand back in, it feels like the sugar is getting washed off, but you know it's just picking up a new layer from the soda bath. You have to be careful of how you sit in the bath, because the more you sink into the tub, the more you're going to get that sticky feeling all over your body when you sit up. You've got a long time ahead of you in this bathtub, and staying comfortable is going to be a challenge. You start to wonder what you've gotten into. What do you really know about this substance you volunteered to sit in for a day? Coca-Cola is one of the most popular packaged beverages in the world, and most of its ingredients are familiar, those we know at least. It's one of the most closely guarded secrets in the world, and its main ingredients are carbonated water, sugar, either sucrose or high fructose corn syrup, phosphoric acid, and caramel color. Plus, natural flavorings. Those natural flavorings are where the big mystery comes in, as the secret flavorings are as tightly guarded as KFC's 11 herbs and spices. There's one flavoring you're pretty sure isn't in there anymore though, cocaine, which was originally included in small doses of extract from coca leaves when the formula was perfected in 1891. There are many other colas, but most have a similar formula with slightly different ingredients. As you sit in the bath and watch your skin get stickier and try to turn pruny, you're more worried about another ingredient you see on the label: phosphoric acid. The idea of sitting in a formula that contains acid for 24 hours is more than a little worrying. You're starting to get visions of dissolving in the bath in your head. The good news is that while phosphoric acid is a potent acid when in its pure form, it can cause burns on the skin or eye damage. It's harmless when diluted. When added to soda or jam, it's used to create a mild, tangy flavor in food. Back in the day of old-fashioned soda shops, sodas containing it were called phosphates. Phosphoric acid is also used to remove rust, but you're hoping it won't have the same effect on your skin. You've been in the bathtub for several hours now, and you're following the rules of the original video. You can only complete the challenge if you stay in the tub for the entire time without a break. The good news is you're fully equipped with technology and your phone and computer are nearby. You can watch videos, order food, and keep busy. But you can't help but sneak a look at your hands and legs every once in a while. This is much longer than the average bath. And you can definitely see your feet and hands starting to get that loose texture that comes with sitting in the bath too long. Does your skin look a little darker from the caramel color sinking into your skin? You're not sure, but you think you can see a slight difference. It'll be much clearer after another few hours. The guy in the original video didn't suffer any long-term physical problems from sitting in the tub for a full day. Besides a sore back and some loose skin he had to be careful not to pull on, but he made it pretty clear that he wouldn't push it much further. There are risks to being constantly immersed in liquid with no break, as soldiers often find out. The most common injury from overexposure to water on the skin is called trench foot, for soldiers who spend days on end walking through wet, marshy climates in combat. With no break and no opportunity to take the boots off and air out their feet, their shoes trap the water and cause swelling, poor blood supply, and a terrible odor from the feet. If treated, the feet will return to normal within a few days. But if the condition is allowed to progress, it can result in blisters, sores, fungal infection, and even gangrene. The good news is this is most common when people are walking constantly in wet shoes. All you have to do is lie there, and you don't have to worry about any of that. Normally, you'd be busy in the bathtub scrubbing yourself clean and using soap and shampoo, but taking a bath in soda is enough of an experiment. You don't want to add more substances that muddy the experiment. Besides, you think scrubbing in sugary water confuses the point of a bath. It's been almost 8 hours now and the water is almost completely flat. That makes it a little more comfortable, but the sticky feeling on your skin is getting more and more pronounced with each hour. It feels like you're coated in a thin, sticky slime of soda. The caramel color is definitely starting to seep into your skin. It's a potent color that's been used in the personal care industry for years as a way to dye hair, but being immersed in it for hours on end makes you wonder if you're going to end up with an uneven tan. You wonder if anyone else has ever done this experiment. You don't have anything else to do while you wait for your soda tub quarantine to be over, so you decide to look up other Coca-Cola baths. You find a few videos of guys claiming to be doing Coca-Cola baths, but most of them are obviously fake. Your skin is starting to get loose and feel a little raw, and you really want to know what a long-term stay in soda is going to do to organic matter. You might not be able to find the answer in a video of someone doing the same challenge, but you can find the next best thing: science experiments on food. Your first hit is a video of an egg suspended in Coca-Cola for 24 hours, and what you see is almost enough to make you jump out of the bath and end your experiment right now. The video shows what the egg looks like after a night in the cola, and it's disturbing. The eggshell is completely dissolved, leaving a thin, translucent membrane holding the white and the yolk. Is that what's going to happen to your skin? You hope not, but you're able to stay calm long enough to check whether this experiment is the real thing. Sure enough, it's not. The entire thing is a hoax by someone using a plastic egg toy to simulate the dissolved egg. There's no evidence that placing an egg in soda will dissolve its shell. Whew! You wipe the sweat off your forehead, but now you have sticky cola on your forehead. Ew. The next experiment you look at is more reassuring. It's a test on whether a marinade of Coca-Cola will dissolve a piece of meat. As you're made of meat, this seems relevant. It's a long-standing urban legend that leaving a steak in a Coca-Cola bath for 48 hours will dissolve the meat entirely, but it's just that, an urban legend. In fact, the meat can be left in for several days without even starting to break down. What it will do after only a day or so is start to tenderize the meat, making it a handy marinade that adds a tasty and sweet overtone to the meat at your next barbecue. Sounds like a recipe to note down once you're out of the soda bath. It's been a long day inside this cola bath, and you've managed to keep busy by reading up on similar experiments, ordering food, and moving around just enough to keep your body from getting too stiff in one position. You've been taking your arms out of the bath frequently to do things, so they're not that much more pruny than your usual appearance after a bath. They're covered in a film of sticky soda sugar that gets dried after a short time outside the bath and then gets wet and slick again when you plunge them back in. Your lower body is a different story, as it's been in the tub this whole time. Your skin has taken on a pale, flabby appearance, especially near your feet. Your skin is loose and easy to pull away from the body. You have to be careful when you examine it. You don't want to tear any away. The clock is ticking down toward the 24-hour mark, and there's one element of this experiment that's wearing you down: staying up for 24 hours. Whether in your apartment or in a bath of cola, not sleeping for 24 hours is going to cause fatigue. It becomes harder to stay focused and keep from drifting off, which is something you definitely don't want to happen. Slipping under in the bathtub would be a very unpleasant experience. Not only is there the risk of drowning, but you don't want to think about getting that soda out of your hair. You keep focused by moving around and watching a few more videos. Almost there. The alarm clock strikes. It's 24 hours. Time to free yourself of your soda bathtub prison. There's just one problem. You gotta get up. After sitting in a bathtub of a mildly corrosive substance for 24 hours, your body is stiff and painful, and your skin is very sensitive, especially in the area below your waist. You move cautiously, inching your way up and being careful not to pull any muscles or tear any skin. As soon as you stand up and pull the plug, watching the soda go down the drain, you start to feel better. It's time to wash off. But that comfortable feeling doesn't last long, as the normal water starts to wash all the sugar off your skin. Your skin is much more sensitive than normal, as the phosphoric acid in the soda has done to you what it does to all meat: tenderized it. You'll want to be careful while washing yourself off, keeping the temperature moderate and turning down the water pressure so it doesn't feel like millions of little water missiles are hitting you. The slimy coating of sugar is washing away, and your skin is starting to return to its normal feeling. Well, almost normal. Your skin will become tight again shortly, just as it does after any long bath, but it's gonna take a couple of baths for the staining of the caramel color all over your body to disappear. And you're definitely not going to scrub it off now, as sensitive as your skin is. You get out of the shower moving cautiously. Your skin is tender and itchy, and you're tempted to start scratching, but you know that could tear the skin and cause bleeding or infection. The best plan is to wear loose-fitting clothing and let your skin return to normal gradually. This was definitely a less pleasant and stickier experience than sitting in water for 24 hours, but it also won't cause massive physical problems if you're in overall good skin health. This experiment was a success, at least until you have to explain to your friends what happened to your skin. Hello, infographics fans! Once more, we're concerned about your health. Obesity rates are finally starting to come down across America, but while the Battle of the Bulge may have started here in the USA, it's spread around the world. Today, modern nations are all battling obesity, as our overprivileged first world lifestyles make life easy and convenient. All that convenience comes at a cost though, and while the world may have laughed and snickered at the US's weight problems, now it's them eating a double serving of humble pie, as populations all over Earth are having to add a few extra holes to their belts. But what can you do to help keep your weight down? And what if you want to start losing weight? Once more, we're tasking your favorite and our least important guinea pig with finding out in this special challenge episode of the Infographics Show. Lose 10 pounds in 1 month. Day 1. It feels so bizarre to say this, but thank God for a normal challenge for once. I mean, by comparison, losing 10 pounds in 1 month is a cakewalk, or a healthy alternative to a cakewalk, rather. At least compared to wearing makeup in public, telling absolutely zero lies for a week, or walking on your hands for 30 days. And no, that last one isn't some secret challenge episode the Infographics Show is waiting to release. I'm just making a point about the level of insanity the producers over at the Infographics Central have been cooking up for the last year. Not gonna lie, this challenge even feels a little necessary. As most of you know by now, I run some of these challenges concurrently because the Infographics Show sadly realized that there just isn't enough months in a year to torture me with. Typically, the challenges don't overlap as far as their effects, but let's just say the last few challenges have had me vegging out a lot, and well, the pounds have crept up on me. That probably doesn't make any sense for our younger YouTube audience that routinely sits on the couch playing Fortnite and devouring sodas and bags of chips all day long without gaining a pound, but just wait until you approach your late 20s and early 30s. Oh man, you have such a rude awakening coming up. Enjoy your blissful ignorance of calories while you can. So even though this challenge seems pretty easy, it's gonna hit me hard because if there's one thing I hate, it's dieting. I don't eat terrible food all too often, but when I get a craving, I want it, and I want it now. And for the next 30 days, I'm not allowed to touch anything that will add a single extra calorie to my diet. I decided that I would try 4 different meal plans for the next month, one each week, and record my weight loss and maybe get an idea of which worked best. For the first week, I'm going to go largely on a liquid diet, which means a lot of juices and smoothies and as little solid food as possible. That's going to make for some fun poops, he said very ironically. For the second week, I'm going to go all vegetable, and right now I'm going to tell you that I'm considering this my hell week. It's not that I don't like vegetables, it's that they are C-SPAN level boring. For the third week, I'm going to try something a little less drastic and instead stick with fish, vegetables, and fruits, limiting the bread and pasta that I eat. And I'm a big fan of both of the latter. Finally, for the fourth week, I'm just going to let the girlfriend cook her heart out and eat whatever she makes. I can tell this challenge really excited her, and as I was making up my plans, she looked about ready to burst, practically begging me to let her take over one of the weeks. I'll be recording my weight loss, how I feel, and my thoughts about what I'm eating. Spoiler alert, I'm probably gonna hate all of it. End of week 1. This was the juice and smoothie week, and when I weighed myself tonight, I found that I lost 2.9 pounds. I've read that weight loss and dieting is more of a state of mind than a physical act, and individuals who stick to a plan where they lose 1 to 2 pounds a week tend to continue successfully dieting. I guess that's because whatever plan they're on, it's one that they can live with as opposed to something really drastic and flat out unbearable. In that regard, I guess I'm pulling slightly ahead of the curve. I mostly drank juices and smoothies, but I did have a few regular meals in between because I'm not an animal. On date night, I had a pretty big dinner, and halfway through the week, I made pasta for both me and the girlfriend, so that definitely pushed the calories. But I guess all of that juice and smoothie drinking paid off and counteracted the weight gain. As far as doing this long term, unless you're a big juice person, I'm not sure that it's totally realistic. I tend to get very bored with juices, and when I make my own smoothies, I always get yelled at by the girlfriend for adding way too much sugar. She says I'm making milkshakes, not smoothies, but I've just never been a huge fruit person myself, and I need something extra to help it along. Physically, I feel fine. Although I'm not gonna lie, liquid diets really leave me craving solid food. The first few days, it was all I could do to keep myself from rushing to the nearest burger joint and eating myself into cardiac arrest. 1 week down though. See you guys in 7 days. End of week 2. Several special operations military training programs have a period of time referred to as Hell Week. This is typically close to the end of your training, and it's when you're pushed to your mental and physical limits, and then right over them and far beyond anything you thought you were capable of. Or you just get washed out, one of the two. This last week was my Hell Week. Vegetables are my Everest. So for the entire week, I ate nothing but vegetables, just to see what the difference would be between the different diets. I included fruits in there as well because I'm not a total maniac, but for the most part, lunch and dinner were vegetarian. It's not that vegetables are terrible tasting, they really aren't, it's just that they're, well, vegetables. I mean, I don't know, there's something deep in my programming that says vegetables don't compute. I don't need to eat meat all the time, but my brain refuses to believe that vegetables alone are enough to satisfy hunger. I can literally fill my stomach until it's bursting, and my brain will absolutely not acknowledge the fact that hunger has been fully sated. But if I even eat just a moderate helping of pasta or something non-vegetable, then my brain is like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, that's enough to fill us up. I lost 3.5 pounds this week, but the entire week I felt physically weak and emaciated. Vegetables are amazingly nutritious and full of vitamins and energy and all that crap, but as far as my body is concerned, I might as well have been eating cardboard. Even my performance during my regular workouts was far worse than before, and I'm starting to think it was all mental. It's like a car with a governor on it that keeps it from going faster than 55. Green beans are my governor and keep my physical energy in the pits, or maybe it's just that by feeding it nothing but vegetables every day, my body simply found no reason to continue living and wanted to throw in the towel. I don't know, but I do know that going strict vegetarian is impossible for me. 2 weeks down, 2 to go. End of week 3. I guess this week was what I would call a pescatarian, or someone who adds fish and seafood to a normal vegetarian diet. Of the 3 diets so far, this was the most palatable, and I actually feel pretty decent after losing 2.1 pounds. I've never been a huge fan of seafood, but fish fillets is pretty close to real meat, and I think it helped to make the entire experience more livable. Then there's the fact that I was allowed to eat shrimp and clams. And while I'm not a big fan of seafood overall, I love shrimp and clams. On date night, me and the girlfriend went to eat sushi since it was one of the few options that are allowed in the rules, and everything else was just basically fried fish or shrimp or whatever. I happen to like sushi, which is weird because I know it's starting to sound dubious when I keep saying that I don't like seafood, but really I don't. Yet sushi is different. Maybe I just don't like cooked seafood, which would make sense considering my brain's very weird positions on different foodstuffs. Tuna steak? No thank you. Gross and fishy. Tuna roll? Yes please. Straight into my tummy. Anyways, this week wasn't so bad, but it was by no means enjoyable. I miss desserts, and there's literally nothing that makes you want a nice big piece of cake less than after dinner fish burps, but I guess maybe that's the point. End of week 4. Hallelujah! The end is here. 4 weeks of insane diets finally done. And with this week's weight loss of 1.8 pounds, I've officially hit the goal of 10.3 pounds lost. So this was the week that I let the girlfriend take over my meal planning. And I really hate to admit it, but she made this last week the most bearable of all. There were no gimmicks this week. Instead, I basically just ate what she already eats on a daily basis. The focus was not on sticking to specific foodstuffs or not eating groups of things, but rather on portion control. We ate pretty much the same things we would normally eat with the exception of breakfast. Typically she eats bowls of fruit and I make myself a bowl of sugary cereal or scrambled eggs. But this week she had me eating fruit one day and then a moderate portion of what I wanted the next. For lunch and dinner we stayed away from red meat and ate a lot of chicken and pork. But the difference is we focused on smaller, more appropriately sized portions. I even got desserts. Within reason, of course, and all of them were low-fat or sugar-free, which is fine because after weeks of hell, even sugar-free ice cream tastes delicious to me. My mood was pretty good the whole week, probably better than it's been all month to be honest, because I wasn't forced on some gimmicky diet that was making me miserable. Instead, I got to eat things I legitimately enjoy, even if the portions weren't quite as satisfying as I wish they would have been. I think that's the hardest part about portion control, having the self-control to limit yourself to only eat what you should instead of stuffing your face until you burst. My weight loss this week was the least of all weeks, but I feel like it was the healthiest and it was definitely the most satisfying. Realistically speaking, I could see myself doing this successfully for weeks at a time, but eating nothing but fish or vegetables or juices is all but impossible. It might not have gotten the biggest results, but it was definitely the diet most likely to stick, and it left me feeling the best afterwards. For anyone following at home, I highly recommend portion control and, of course, exercise. You're just not going to lose much weight on dieting alone, and I wouldn't have hit my goals without it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to physically dive into a man-sized chocolate lava cake to celebrate the loss of 10 pounds I'm about to immediately put back on. Telepathy, mediumship, clairvoyance. A 2005 Gallup survey found that 3 out of 4 Americans have at least one paranormal belief. The most commonly held conviction of those surveyed at 41% was believing in ESP or extrasensory perception. But has anyone ever definitely proven that they have a paranormal power or that paranormal powers are real? During the 1940s, a young magician named James Randi toured with a carnival, performing various magic and psychic tricks. He became dismayed with a number of people who were certain that he had mystical powers and wouldn't believe that his abilities were clever ploys. Eventually, Randi became a skeptic and debunker. In 1964, during a radio talk show, James offered $1,000 to anyone who could show scientific proof of their paranormal abilities. Since his initial offer, James has continued to investigate and debunk various paranormal and pseudoscience proceedings and beliefs. In 1996, with a donation from a friend, James created the James Randi Education Foundation, or JREF, a skeptic society set up in an office in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and issued a challenge: demonstrate evidence of a paranormal, supernatural, or occult power, and we'll pay you a cool $1 million. So has anyone succeeded in winning the money? Well, as you can imagine, a wide range of applicants who claim various powers have vied for the prize. The challenge works this way. An applicant submits a notarized form detailing their ability and proposes a test to prove the existence of their powers. JREF accepts or denies the bid based on the plausibility of the claim, possibility of proving it, level of danger involved in proving the power, and other initial guidelines. For example, JREF famously turned down Rico Colazzi, a breatharian who claimed to have survived for years without eating food. If JREF decides to move ahead with the applicant, staff and the applicant usually negotiate the protocol for the preliminary demonstration and arrange a time. The rules of the demonstration vary according to the particular paranormal power meant to be showcased. If the applicant passes the preliminary test, then they would participate in a second final test where they would demonstrate their power under stricter scientific protocol to earn the $1 million. Some interesting challengers were L. Colvin, who claimed to be a psychic attuned to Jeopardy, the quiz game show. He could predict with 100% accuracy which of the 30 squares used during the game would be the daily double before it appeared on the screen. JREF referred Colvin to a group local to him, the Seattle Skeptic Society, for preliminary testing. Colvin neither contacted Seattle skeptics nor followed up with JREF. Julian Goldberg claimed that he could emit a magnetic field from the palm of his hand, at least 500 times stronger than what normally arises from the functioning of the human body. After a few emails discussing how a preliminary test would work, Julian ceased responding. Ian Leahy claimed to be able to summon unidentified flying objects for observation in the sky. Negotiations for a preliminary test broke down when JREF asked how they could know that a particular UFO was summoned by the applicant rather than being northern lights or any other weather phenomena that happened to be occurring during the time of demonstration. Hawaiian psychic Ashao Nguyen claimed to be able to mentally send words to a person who would accurately receive them and write them down. Ashao and his friends traveled to Los Angeles, where Independent Investigations Group, in conjunction with JREF, conducted a preliminary test. Before the demonstration, Ashao and his friend E, who was to receive the telepathic messages, were separated. Each was scanned with a metal detector. Furthermore, the men's shoes, ears, and the interior of their mouths were examined for transmitting technology. E was then seated at a desk in a room with only one high window. He was given a pen and 2 sheets of paper with 20 blank spaces for answers, and a cup of water. A camera was set up to record him, and a paranormal investigator with a radio would observe him. On a different floor, in a room with no outside windows, Ashao was seated in front of the other paranormal investigators, a few cameras, and a small audience. He was given a choice of 2 sealed envelopes, each containing 30 index cards. Upon Ashao selecting an envelope, an investigator opened it and had him choose 20 cards. The investigator then shuffled the 20 cards with his back to Ashao and placed them word side up on the table in view of the audience. One by one, Ashao went through the stack of cards, telepathically sending them over to E, who wrote the answers down. The investigators in each room radioed each other when each word was sent and subsequently written down. Unfortunately, Ashao failed. His receiver got the word wrong 20 out of 20 times. A few days after the test, Xiao sent an email apologizing for his strong reaction to failing the initial demonstration of his telepathic abilities and blamed his failure on the receiver, Yi. Xiao felt that if Yi hadn't been half-hearted in his participation, he would have succeeded. In the spring of 2007, after 10 years of offering the $1 million challenge, JREF tightened their criteria for accepting applicants. They were receiving several hundred claims a year and were spending a lot of time investigating ludicrous things. The new rules required applicants to have a media profile that tracked their paranormal activity and to be endorsed by someone in academia. JREF also made the preliminary test optional, depending on the individual investigation, meaning that some applicants could showcase their extraordinary ability once to win $1 million. The hope was that the new rules would free up time and money, making it easier for JREF to challenge well-known professional psychics who were making a living off the credulous public. Yet in the summer of 2007, JREF agreed to let Rosemary Hunter do a preliminary test. Hunter claimed to have the God-given talent of being able to make people urinate with the power of her mind. While being paranormally induced to pee, a participant might also experience side effects, which included laughter, red welts, drooling, uncontrollable crying, and healing of minor injuries. Her claim was dubiously backed by a local newspaper article where the reporter felt odd when subjected to Rosemary's power. Protocol negotiation decided that Rosemary would have 15 minutes to use her paranormal urination ability on JREF manager Jeff Wegg. The guidelines for the test were, Jeff was to empty his bladder prior to the demonstration. Rosemary and Jeff would stand for the duration of the test, which would occur in a private room. Another JREF staff member would record the proceedings. A second camera would live stream the demonstration. Rosemary could touch Jeff's hand and speak if necessary, but couldn't use any props, only the paranormal ability of her mind to make Jeff pee. Jeff was not allowed to wear a diaper or any other absorbent item, but could only participate wearing regular pants and underwear. So was Rosemary able to physically induce Jeff to pee? Unfortunately, no. Most of the time, JREF had trouble getting well-known personalities who claimed paranormal abilities to rise to the occasion. Over the years, several professional psychics ignored or refused the challenge, some initially accepting it, but later backing out with various excuses. In 2001, during 2 separate appearances on the talk show Larry King Live, psychic Sylvia Brown agreed to take the JREF challenge. Later on, she refused to be tested and maintained that refusal until her death in 2013. JREF also invited psychic John Edward and James Randi's longtime nemesis Uri Geller, whom James had attempted to denounce as a con man since the 1970s, to take the challenge. Both ignored the invitation. The applicants who have attempted a demonstration and failed always have excuses as to why they failed. None ever seem to believe that they simply don't have supernatural ability. After failing a JREF demonstration of dowsing some randomly selected cards hidden in envelopes, Danish psychic/dowser Connie Sauna claimed she failed because it wasn't yet time for her powers to be revealed. In 2008, JREF publicly invited British businessman James McCormick to take the challenge. McCormick's company, Advanced Tactical Security and Communications Limited, ATSC, was making millions selling a device called the ADE-651 to security forces in the Middle East and Asia. Touted as a bomb detector, the ADE-651 allegedly could detect items including guns, ammunition, drugs, human bodies, and ivory at a distance of up to 1 kilometer, underground, through walls, and underwater. McCormick never took JREF up on the $1 million challenge. However, investigation by JREF and other groups helped to publicize the fraudulence of the device and start a police investigation into it. ADE-651 was revealed to be a glorified dowsing rod. Export of the detector was banned by the British government in 2010, and ATCS's offices were raided. Eventually, McCormick was arrested, convicted of fraud, and sentenced to 10 years in jail. Also in 2008, baby mind reader Derek Ogilvie agreed to take part in JREF's $1 million challenge as part of a UK TV documentary series Extraordinary People. For the test, Derek chose pairs of parents and children out of a group of volunteers. Derek was then isolated in a soundproof room, while the babies in a different room picked a numbered ball out of a bag, which corresponded to a specific toy that the baby was then given the chance to hold. Derek had to announce which toy the baby had chosen. Derek failed, answering all 10 chances wrong. Upon finding out that James Randi had spoken to the parent and child beforehand, Derek demanded that the test be repeated with untainted volunteers. The test was repeated, and Derek got 1 out of the second 10 answers right, so overall, 1 out of 20. a normal result conforming to statistical chance. Due to criticism that valid contenders couldn't participate on the paranormal challenge because of their lack of media coverage, in 2011 JREF loosened its rules. Finally, in 2015, JREF announced Randy's retirement and shut down the challenge. JREF claims to have evaluated over 1,000 applicants and fielded communication with hundreds more. No applicant has ever succeeded in their bid and made it past the preliminary demonstration. Some saw the JREF challenge as mean-spirited, skewed, and/or disingenuous. They claim that the rules are slanted in favor of the foundation, and there's no guarantee that the foundation would pay out the $1 million if a demonstration proved successful. In fact, there's no proof that the foundation ever had $1 million to give away. Also, since JREF could accept or deny applicants to test for the challenge, they simply turned away valid challengers with unexplainable powers to exploit applicants who made ludicrous claims and might even have been mentally ill. JREF stated that the $1 million was held in bonds and laid out their protocol for demonstrations, often publicly streaming the events over the web. Critics also pointed out that no one can perform at 100% all of the time, particularly under pressure with a public audience. If a psychic has a 50% success rate of successful sessions, the public demonstration could be one of the 50 times they fail out of 100 times they tried. Even a star pitcher isn't able to strike out every single batter 100% of the time. However, it would be unlikely that over 20 years of challenges, that every person with paranormal abilities would randomly experience failure during a demonstration. Furthermore, many of the applicants couldn't achieve any measure of success by proving at least one correct answer during the test. A number of other skeptic societies around the world continue to offer various monetary prizes for demonstration of paranormal powers. However, to our knowledge, no one has ever succeeded at demonstration for paranormal powers, and no skeptic community has ever awarded a prize for doing so. Hey, challenge fans! We're sure most of you saw our original challenge episode where we tried to come up with ways of spending $1 billion in real life in just one day. Well, today we're putting it up to our favorite lab rat and challenging him to find realistic ways of spending $1 billion in 24 hours, but because it's COVID quarantine season, he can't leave the house. So can you really spend a cool $1 billion online in 24 hours? Let's find out. Alright, I bet all of you out there in YouTube land are about as sick and tired of being stuck at home as I am. Well, other than going stir-crazy, I happen to be a statistic and actually got infected. But thankfully, it was mild and cleared up in a few weeks. Turns out the girlfriend is one of the lucky ones and was asymptomatic, but just in case, we made sure to bunker up at our place like it was a zombie apocalypse survival challenge. I don't know which of the two, the girlfriend or our dog, has suffered the worst from this lockdown. She loves to be active, and this lockdown has her going absolutely stir-crazy. Our poor dog is used to going to agility training into the dog park to hang out with other pups, and the best we've been able to do with him is play fetch in the house. The other day I caught both of them staring out the window, and I swear they had tears in their eyes. You probably noticed we've been on a challenge break given the circumstances and my health, so it's kind of nice to be actually able to do another challenge, even if it's just online. Spend $1 billion over the internet without ever leaving home. That's a lot of money, and the rules of the challenge are going to make it rather difficult. First, there's no just giving it away to charity. I have to find real things to spend the money on. Second, the entire purchasing process has to be done electronically. The buying and receipt process of whatever I would buy all has to be possible remotely, never requiring a face-to-face meeting or exchange. So let's start. Okay, so right off the bat, I thought about real estate because it's the most expensive thing you can possibly buy, and I need to eat up this massive budget as quickly as I can. After all, I need to actually be able to buy everything I plan on acquiring online. Far more difficult than in person. Also, there's a sweet bonus from the infographic show on the line for me if I can hit the $1 billion mark in a realistic way. Yeah, the show's officially turning these challenges into a messed up game show. So I turned to Dubai, knowing that they have private islands for sale there, and private islands in one of the world's most expensive places can't be cheap. I had to make sure that I could actually complete a transaction fully remotely, so I did what any normal person would do. I reached out to them directly and pretended I wanted to buy an island. Turns out it's pretty damn easy. I got hold of the real estate agency by email first, and they responded very quickly and set up a time to call. Now, I couldn't just pretend to be the buyer directly because no insanely rich person handles such mundane details as buying islands themselves, so I had the girlfriend pretend to be my assistant, which worked really well because she's a very gifted actress. Within 2 hours and after just 3 phone calls back and forth between us and the real estate office in Dubai, we had an island worth $455 million lined up and ready for purchase. Now, the payment process would take a few days because, as we're told, it would have to be done via bank wire transfer, and officials in both the US and Dubai would have to inspect it. You can't just move around such massive quantities of money without the government taking a peek to make sure everything is legit. Then there'd have to be reams of paperwork to be signed and some government forms from Dubai, but all of it, I was assured, could be done quickly and completely over the internet, by phone, or if need be, fax. Boom! Just like that, I owned an island. Well, I mean, not really, but either way, almost halfway through this challenge with just one purchase. $545 million to go. I headed over to eBay because I figured that place was full of enough crap that there were bound to be plenty of things to help me reach my billion-dollar budget. I was definitely not disappointed. I went to automobiles first, figuring that cars would probably be the most expensive thing there. The clock was winding down, so I had to spend my money economically, achieving a very high dollar-to-hours ratio. So I ignored anything under $1 million, and honestly, the car section is kinda disappointing to me. Sure, there were Bugattis and McLaren P1s for sale, but even after buying enough cars for myself and all my extended family and exhausting every single car over $1 million I could find, it all still only came to $43 million. Still, that's a total of $498 million and only $502 million left to go. I turned to collectibles and I found some real gems there, though nothing quite as pricey as I imagined. Still, I snagged a sweet original negative from the Hiroshima atomic bombing for $2 million, and I have to admit it was fascinating to make that find. I also found a World War II Japanese officer's sword and a top-secret British map of the front lines, both for over $1 million. What really blew my mind, though, was a piece of a letter written by the Prophet Muhammad going for $1.2 million. I wondered about the authenticity, but it came with a certificate of authenticity, and the seller had over 90% positive feedback, so probably legit. Alright, I racked up a total bill of $38 million in collectible photographs, maps, and other similar antiques, though it sort of became a bit of a rabbit hole for me and I spent a good hour and a half looking through all the postings. Most of that time was while the girlfriend was on the phone with the real estate agents in Dubai, of course. Still, it wasn't a very efficient use of my time. I wasn't spending enough money per hour and I needed to step it up a notch. I turned to antiques now and was blown away by a $21 million cabinet. Yeah, you heard that right, a cabinet worth $21 million. At least to someone, anyway. Apparently, the cabinet was gifted by Queen Victoria to various British nobles. And those Brits, despite living in a democracy, they're confusingly still crazy about royals. Like 100 years ago, these guys were literally stomping on peasants' necks, and today they're getting turned into celebrities. I just don't understand. Anyway, I thought it was funny when I found a life-sized carving of Sitting Bull's head for sale for $8.5 million. It was attributed to an early American folk artist, but the seller admits that it hadn't been authenticated. That takes some balls to sell an item you haven't even authenticated yet and ask for $8.5 million, so I put it on the list. To top it all off with some random ancient Chinese porcelain, more British royal memorabilia, and other odds and ends, and my antique shopping spree came out to a cool $74 million, putting a serious dent in my budget and making for a very efficient millions per hour spending rate. New total $610 million, $390 to go. Now, I figured art was a surefire way to spend some big bucks, and let me tell you, I wasn't disappointed here. I found some Jackson Pollock original paintings all for at least $10 million, along with 2 paintings of, streaks, also going for $10 million. Listen, I get it, I'm an artist myself, but if you're spending $10 million for a streak of paint on white canvas, you really need to check yourself before you rickety-wreck yourself, because you just got. Still, it was pricey. So into the shopping bag it went. All in all, after spending obscene amounts on modern art, my bill came down to $98 million. Interestingly though, I didn't find any paintings over $10 million, making me wonder if there's some limit eBay is willing to let dumb people spend on their site. New total $708 million, with $292 million to go. By now I'd spent 6 hours shopping and it was time for lunch, so I ordered Grubhub sushi for the girlfriend and I. Total $58.30. But I picked up that tab myself. This was going much better than I'd hoped for, to be honest. Mostly because, as I mentioned, dumb people are paying obscene amounts of money for dumb art. I figured that after all this coronavirus lockdown crap, me and the girlfriend deserved a vacation, so I looked for ways to finance a getaway with our remaining millions. I found what's billed as the world's most expensive hotel room, which is on a private submarine down in the Caribbean, called the Lover's Deep. Price tag $292,000 a night, so with airfare and a 5-night getaway, that came to $1.5 million. I threw in some fun activities like swimming with sharks, luxury yacht rentals, plus a crew, of course, and a few other odds and ends, and managed to spend $3.2 million on a 5-day trip. Thing is, it was an incredibly inefficient use of my time because it took almost 2 hours to even find the contact info for the Lover's Deep. Because as I found out, at least as of this writing, it's not a thing you can just Google. I had to have the girlfriend call down to several places at St. Lucia itself to find anyone who had contact info for the company that rents out the sub, and once again with her posing as my very sexy personal assistant. Turns out this sub is kind of one of those unique experiences that only the ultra wealthy are supposed to know about. I feel like if I included the contact info in this video, someone might come after me. New total, $711.2 million. Definitely not a good use of my time. Alright, regular business hours for American businesses were coming to a close soon, so I pulled out all the stops for this next expense. I headed over to Space Adventure's website and got a public relations phone number to call. After a half hour of back and forths, they quoted me that for an upcoming circumlunar mission, the cost would be $117 million per person, and the trip is supposed to span less than a week and consists of 2 passengers with 1 professional Russian cosmonaut. Your spacecraft will swing around the far side of the moon without entering into orbit and return to Earth, bringing you as low as 100 meters from the lunar surface. Now, of all the things I spent fake money on, this was without a doubt the thing that had me most excited. I love space, and the thought of getting within 100 meters of the moon made me so excited that I got sad when I realized I wouldn't actually be going. Also, I would never get the opportunity to make the ultimate terrible joke by getting into space with the girlfriend, turning to her and saying, "You know, I think you're out of this world." So 2 dreams crushed in one blow. What a cruel life. Still, my new total was $945.2 million, with $54.8 million to go, except not because Space Adventures also quoted a single seat to the ISS for $55 million. And just like that, boom, $1 billion spent. Sure, I went over budget, but I guess I could just cut back some on the dumb art I bought, and yeah, it makes me a little sad that I'd have to leave the girlfriend behind while I went to the ISS, but as she put it, going to the ISS seems dumb, I bet it smells up there, but the moon is romantic. Mission accomplished, and it only took less than 12 hours. Granted, I couldn't have done it without the girlfriend pretending to be my personal assistant to various real estate and luxury resort offices, so half the credit goes to her. Now, the payment for some of these things would take a few days to sort out, but I was assured that none of it would actually need to be done in person, and the bank could handle all wire transfers electronically. So if you've ever wondered if you could really spend $1 billion online in one day, the answer is yes. It's time for another Let's Play featuring the infographics show's favorite lab rat. Thanks to a pandemic, we're a bit limited on the challenges we can send our most expendable writer on, so instead, we're having him try out some of the net's favorite games. Turns out he was pretty bad at Minecraft. Is he any better at Kerbal Space Program? Stay tuned to find out. Alright, Kerbal Space Program. Now, this game I've had my eye on for a while. It was actually sitting on my Steam wishlist, so I was kinda stoked for Infographics to buy me a copy and have me play it as a challenge. I love space, and I love sandbox-style games, plus I know about spaceflight already from my general knowledge and the fact that one of my friends used to work for NASA before moving to Europe to work for the ESA. No, I don't know where the aliens are at, and she wouldn't tell me. Okay, so I figured I'd watch some tutorials before hopping on and avoid some of the pain of jumping into the game blind like I did with Minecraft. And the guy I was watching playing recommended a few mods, so I installed them to make life easier for me. Next, it was time to conquer space, Kerbal style. First mission, launch a rocket. Simple enough, especially given the fact that I have like 3 rocket parts to work with. I fired up my booster, and in seconds my Kerbal was having to peel his face off the interior of the capsule thanks to the incredible acceleration. I nearly panicked though when after deploying my chute it decided not to open up until the rocket was like 6 inches from the ground. I owe Jeb a cold one. He rode a rocket to near certain doom like a pro. Next mission, orbit Kerbal. Alright, so to get into orbit, I know you have to move sideways as fast or faster than the planet is pulling you down. Astronauts only appear weightless in orbit because they're in freefall, perpetually missing the planet as it pulls them down thanks to their sideways momentum. It's like when you're in an elevator that's in freefall and experience the same weightlessness, only an astronaut's body won't turn into jello on impact with the bottom floor because they never really stop falling. They just keep always missing the Earth. So I had to launch up on a trajectory with a lot of horizontal speed. Now you can go straight up and then at the apex of your trajectory start pushing sideways, but that's like walking along the sides of a square building to get from one side to the other. You can cheat instead by cutting the distance roughly in half and just going diagonal. Thanks to the Kerbal Engineer add-on, I could see the delta V I needed to achieve orbit, and I got the Kerbin values from a handy-dandy subway map I found online. Actually, flying the rocket was a bit hairy, but we got into orbit no problem. Then I snatched up my science from the goo canisters because the tutorial I watched online warned about stuff getting vaporized on re-entry. And then I fired my engine retrograde to drop out of orbit. Sure enough, the goo canisters exploded and I panicked for a moment thinking my capsule was going kablam. My goal was a lunar landing, so the next step was to achieve a flyby of the moon. I decided I'd fly a two-man mission, bringing Jebediah and Bob along so that Bob could do some handy science stuff. I used my handy Delta V subway map again and built a multi-stage rocket with liquid fuel boosters. I decided the solid fuel boosters were overkill for my current needs and made my rockets a bit uncontrollable. Well, everything was going great until about 8,000 meters when the rocket started flipping end over end. I realized that in this current design, as the fuel drained, it changed the center of gravity of the rocket, made it extremely unstable in thick atmosphere. Oh, also, I forgot to put a parachute on the capsule. I was determined to save my Kerbal's lives though, so I decoupled the capsule and decided the only way to survive was to jump for it. Now Jeb's parachute opened no problem, and he floated serenely down, enjoying the view of an out-of-control rocket loaded with fuel flying around over his head. Bob, however, well, I don't know if it's a bug or maybe only pilots get parachutes, but Bob had no chute. Moving at 50 meters a second toward a very pancakey death on the ocean, all Bob could do was put his helmet back on. Safety first, kids, and then start firing his RCS jetpack as furiously as he could. That shaved like a whole 1 meter a second off his fall speed, but incredibly Bob survived his splashdown. Never mind that at those speeds a human would have had every bone in their body shattered, and their shins would have ended up in their skull if they hit feet first. Somehow Bob actually survived. My rocket needed a redesign, and Bob needed a long vacation, so it was moonshot number 2 for me. Attempt number 2, a one-man mission, because Bob and I weren't exactly on speaking terms. New, lighter, and improved design featuring an honest-to-God parachute on the capsule for a safe return this time. Liftoff and orbit went without a hitch, but when I began my lunar injection burn, I kinda realized my Delta V was looking pretty low. I knew I hadn't exactly achieved the most efficient orbit in the world, but according to my Delta V subway map of the Kerbal system, I should have had more than enough Delta V in my final stage to fly by the moon. With the engine sputtering to a stop, it was time to revert to a vehicle assembly. Wouldn't it be nice if real missions could do the same? Would save billions in taxpayer dollars, that's for sure. Okay, attempt number 3. I skipped recording the liftoff this time because you guys get it by now. And I successfully completed a lunar injection burn, only to realize that again I was short on go juice to deorbit and land back home. Once more, revert to assembly. Time for more tinkering. I'm still coming up short in the Delta V. There's been so many versions of KSP I found out that maybe I was using an old Delta V map or something. Attempt number 4. Alright, this time I know I over-engineered this mission, with more than enough fuel. If I came up short again, my flying and engineering skills must really suck. But no, I managed to make it out to the moon and had more than enough fuel to deorbit and make it back home. As I was cruising within a few thousand meters of the lunar surface though, I couldn't help but think of how awe-inspiring all this was. I mean, I know the graphics are not the best, and they really can't be in games like this or it'll melt your computer, but there is just something about spaceflight that's so awesome. I would have given anything to be on one of the original Apollo missions, since apparently the USA has given up on doing anything awesome in space. After exiting the moon's sphere of influence, I waited to get to the apoapsis and fired my deorbit burn. It's always best to fire at the apoapsis since it's more fuel efficient. Though to be honest, I had so much fuel left over I could have been as sloppy and inefficient as I wanted to. Everything was going well until I sped up the game and I flew straight through Kerbal and popped out the other side. I guess this is because the game simulates in chunks, and if it's moving too fast, it'll simulate straight through re-entry. You know what? As far as I'm concerned, that's mission accomplished. Time for a moon landing. Alright, I designed a multi-stage rocket with a lunar injection stage and then a combined descent and return stage. My tech tree was kinda lacking, so I don't know if there's better tech out there to do this with, but I was stuck with what I had. This design was definitely inefficient, and building something more along the lines of an Apollo lander would have been way better. But as I was quickly learning, this was Kerbal Space Program, and there's no problem that can't be solved with more boosters. So sitting on the launch pad, I decided to try to snag some quick science using my brand new science module. It's free science, why not? I sent Bob out of the capsule and tried to slowly edge him downwards to get in range of the science module so he could nab the science and reset it. I wanted to use it again in flight, and that's when Bob totally biffed it, falling off the capsule and smacking against the boosters before landing flat on his face on the ground. Okay, my science greed needed to get under control. I'm so sorry again, Bob. I'll make it up to you one day. Attempt number 2, and I decided to just launch. Everything went peachy until about 9,000 meters when I tried to do a gravity turn way too early and the whole thing flipped out of control. I figured I'd throw some fins on this bad boy and sort out the stability problems. Also, it couldn't hurt to put some booster separators on my big boosters. Last thing I needed was a mid-air collision. Okay, attempt number 3. Rome wasn't built in a day. The fins worked great, booster separation went off without a hitch, and then I realized that my burn to orbit was hugely inefficient. Alright, I did some off-camera research to try to get better tech and came back for attempt number 4. This time I'd use different boosters and fuel lines so that my main engine could fire at the same time as my boosters, but use fuel from the boosters rather than from its own reserve. This way I could gain all that acceleration without using any of my main ascent stage's fuel. Also, I switched to a one-man lander. Sorry, Bob, but you gotta sit this one out. I can't spare the Delta V and I was getting pretty sick at failing. Sadly, the design was pretty unstable and inevitably flipped out of control. Too bad, because the boosters looked pretty slick. Okay, complete new design. Time for a new attempt. This time I decided that bigger was better and I used the brand new size fuel tanks and the new engine to brute force my way to victory. The initial thrust to weight ratio was going to kill my Delta V though low in the atmosphere, so I strapped on a pair of boosters and lit that firecracker up. To be honest, I didn't expect this design to work for some reason, probably because it looks so dumb. But sometimes dumb just works, and I was in orbit with Delta V to spare. Or so I thought. I'm pretty sure my descent burn to the moon was pretty inefficient because by the time Valentina touched down, she definitely did not have enough fuel to get back home. Rather than let poor V die on the moon alone, it was time to revert the launch once more. Man, I'm doing a good job of not crashing things, which I feel is the most important part of this game, but I am crap at figuring out how to fly efficiently. Alright, attempt number… I forgot, to be honest. Let's all be grateful that real NASA didn't screw up this badly. I had meant for Valentina to be the first Kerbal on the moon, #girl power, but when I redesigned the whole ship, I accidentally let Jeb pilot it. At this point, I just wanted to plant a damn flag on the damn moon already. So it was mission go with Jeb en route to be the first Kerbal to stand on a heavenly object. The new design worked pretty well, and I even made it into orbit with some spare fuel in the ascent stage. That was good, because I was pretty sure I would need it for the descent on the moon. I made it to the moon in one piece and then eyeballed a good landing spot on the sun side, only to realize I was about to go over the edge of a giant crater, so I fired to change my trajectory to just short of the crater. After a few burns to adjust my landing area, I screamed toward the surface at over 100 meters a second, waiting for a last-second suicide burn to land safely. It was ballsy, but you know what? I have faith in the math, and the math didn't lie. The suicide burn was successful and I hit the surface at about 1 meter a second. Not too shabby for a piloted landing. Now it was time to do a few bounces, plant a flag, and discovered that the moon was not made out of cheese after all. Then, well, I hadn't really brought much science to do or anything, so it was all pretty bare bones to be honest. So there wasn't much to do but fly home. Instead of flying straight into an orbit and wasting fuel, instead I got into a descent height and burned a trajectory straight back into the Kerbian sphere of influence. Then I flew back up to the apoapsis and with literal fumes left in the tank managed to successfully deorbit a bit too aggressively with my first burn, putting me on a suicide run straight into Kerbin's surface at an extremely steep trajectory. I readjusted to something a little less suicide-y and time warped for a nice re-entry into the atmosphere. Much like the real Apollo mission, I let my landing stage burn up in the atmosphere instead of my capsule, leading to one heck of an awesome light show. Man, is there anything cooler than rockets or re-entry? No. The answer is no. A few minutes later, Jebediah was back safely on the surface of Kerbin, except I realized I left the smartass on retrograde and his capsule kept flipping over trying to align retrograde. Oh well. Jeb was safe back home, even if it was the middle of nowhere, and my mission was completed. Moon landing accomplished, and my Kerbal space program was basically as advanced as the US's, despite the US having half a century to do something other than sit in low Earth orbit. I had a blast with this one. I definitely liked KSP much better than Minecraft, though in the end I feel like I'm going to be playing both games long term. Hey there, challenge fans! It may still be quarantine season across most of the world, but we found ways to explore more of the world's mysteries with your favorite lab rat. We've been concerned with the toll sitting at home all day has had on the health of everyone's favorite guinea pig, so we're tasking him with keeping his physical fitness up with 30 days of running. What kind of impact will this have on your health? Is it a good way to lose weight? Stay tuned and find out. Day 1. Running. I hate running. I believe I've famously made that opinion quite clear, and so naturally Infographics decides that now I'll have to do it every day for 30 days. Honestly, I should have just kept my mouth shut. I guess the quarantine has seriously sapped the creativity of the Infographics team. How many challenges can you really do while stuck at home? Alright, we all know that running is healthy. Basically, everyone recommends it as a way to lose weight, boost your stamina, and get in shape. I've done plenty of running in my time. I spent years doing it in the military, and I feel like I've fulfilled my running quota for life. So while the girlfriend goes running every morning 5 days a week, I skip the cardio most of the time. Not anymore though, and nobody's happier about me picking up a serious running habit than the girlfriend, who is constantly pushing me to join her. Congrats, babe. Wish granted. Oh, I've heard that running barefoot like our ancestors is much better for your health, so stay tuned for week 4 when I try that out. Alright, I'll start off easy at a mile a day, then gradually tack on more and more distance as I feel that my stamina increases. I hate to admit it, but I really have been kind of sitting on my butt during this whole quarantine, so I'm a pretty good test subject for this. My physical fitness has definitely been lacking. So just how good is running really for your health? Let's find out. End of week 1. The thought of waking up early and running was dreadful, so I decided I would not be joining the girlfriend for her morning runs. And on the first day I put it off until about noon. That proved to be a mistake, since summer is officially here and LA is really heating up. The next day I fixed that mistake and gladly woke up early to run with the girlfriend at about 6 a.m. You know what I hate about running? It's the most boring exercise you can do. I mean, it's not like lifting weights is super entertaining, but you only have to do it for really short amounts of time. Unlike running, where you spend 20 or 30 minutes just running. Maybe if they could make a VR app where you're being chased by terrorists or Bigfoot, now that can make running exciting and maybe a little fun. Also probably terrifying. But seriously, if anyone out there makes VR apps, you know that running away from Bigfoot app would be a gold mine. Get on it. Alright, other than boring, running is absolutely exhausting, and I truly do hate it from the bottom of my heart. The girlfriend always talks about a runner's high, and I think she's just a regular old high, because I've never so much as experienced a single moment of joy while running. I've been starting with a modest goal of running a mile, and that's good too, because I'm practically ready to vomit by the time I get to the mile mark. I didn't even bother to time myself. No point in embarrassing myself further. I used to run like a 6-minute mile when I was in the military, but I was also in far greater shape. One thing I do miss though is singing cadences while running in formation. It's weird how your brain kind of gets lulled into this sense of hypnosis when you're with a group and singing cadences as you push yourself from your 4th to 5th straight mile of running, of course with a ruck full of rocks and sandbags. Oh, by the way, that's a great way to get back problems later in life. Believe that. So after a week of running, I decided to weigh myself and discovered I'd lost 2 pounds. Not bad for really not having changed my diet at all. I'd put on a little, plush during quarantine, and the girlfriend's been having fun poking at it. So I'm looking forward into getting back into normal shape. I guess I really have been lacing it up while everyone's stuck at home. See you guys at the end of week 2. End of week 2. I've started listening to military cadences on my headphones as I run, though I've kept myself from actually yelling them out and making everyone around me think I'm crazy. What is crazy though is I kinda miss the old days, and that's something I never thought I'd say. The cadences really help, though I don't know what help they would be for you if you've never been in the situation for real. I think you need to feel that sense of camaraderie and shared anguish to really get it, but I could be wrong. If running is as boring to you as it is to me, maybe try it out. Like I said, the rhythm of the cadences really does lull you into a weird hypnosis, and you just sort of keep running despite how tired you are. I really surprised myself. After my first week, I was able to bump it up to 1.5 miles, but after only 2 days, it was clear I could go a lot further and just jumped straight up to 2 miles. The girlfriend says that it's muscle memory from my old days, but I'm not so sure that's scientific. She claims that when she is involved in a really long production and doesn't have time to exercise regularly, she can bounce back really fast thanks to muscle memory. I just think she has great genes. I told her that and then followed it up with, and what's inside them ain't bad either, and smacked her on her blue jeans covered butt, and she punched me in the arm, really hard, because we were in public. Alright, other than nursing a bruised bicep, I've been hitting the running track every day this week and it's gotten a lot easier. I think that's the way with any exercise though. Once you get over the initial hump, it smooths out and exercise gets so much easier to do and to want to do. So hey, I know that there's some of you watching this right now that are dealing with that hump. Just do it. Force yourself to do it. Push yourself for 2 to 3 weeks and I promise you'll see the results and you'll realize you're over the hump. Don't quit. I believe in you. I lost another 3 pounds this week, and again, that's without any special diet changes, literally just running. I imagine that if I was overweight and trying to lose weight with diet and exercise, the pounds would really be coming off. I guess I can't deny running is a great exercise for losing weight. End of week 3. I don't know if I've yet to discover this runner's high that the girlfriend speaks of, but I definitely have gotten to like pushing myself further and further. I decided that the running track was too boring, going around in circles was driving me nuts, so I instead jogged over to the beach and thought I'd run along in the sand. Thing is, I forgot how hard it is to run in sand, so I very quickly went back to running along the street next to the beach. On the first day of this 3rd week, I decided I'd push myself to see where my limits currently are, and I used my phone to track myself. Running on the street was much better than running stupid circles at the track and a lot more entertaining. I was shocked to discover I had run nearly 5 miles before reaching what I'd call the absolutely breaking down, can't take another step status. Of course, it was shortly thereafter that I realized I would have to either run or walk back those exact same 5 miles because I wasn't on a track anymore. Instead, I called an Uber, and I'm pretty sure my driver knew exactly what had just gone down. So, pushing myself to my limits proved to be a terrible idea, as I so often discover long after the deed is done. My legs cramped hardcore. I'm talking Charlie horses on Charlie horses, and if there's a more painful type of muscle cramp, please let me know in the comments. Except, of course, period pains. That's right, ladies, I got your back. Hashtag lady pains. You know what though, I'm glad I pushed myself to the brink. Sometimes you just have to push yourself as hard as you can and find out exactly where your limits are. Running the next day, however, after those severe muscle cramps was bad news, and I only managed a half mile. I needed time to rest, but I needed to keep up the challenge, so that day and the next I kept it to half a mile. Then settled into a 3-mile run. That's pretty close to the 3.5 miles to 4 miles my girlfriend runs every day, so I'm catching up and it only took 3 weeks. Kinda proud of myself. I lost another 1.5 pounds, and I think my weight loss is slowing down because I was never overweight to begin with. I don't really think there's much more left to lose that isn't, well, normal. End of week 4. Challenge complete. 4 weeks of running every day in the bag. I did some rough math and I think I ended up running something like 80 miles this month. That's like a third of the way from LA to Vegas. My leg muscles are hard as steel rods and my calves are absolutely popping like a soccer player. The girlfriend definitely likes that. I think it's weird how girls are attracted to calf muscles, but they really are. Go figure. For this week I settled into a 4-mile run, and while it never got fun, it definitely got easier. I think the hardest part is just telling your brain to shut up, it's time to run, and the sooner you do it, the sooner it's over. I don't know about any runner's high, I think that's just a myth, though the girlfriend swears by it. I do have to admit it feels nice after the run. You feel good about yourself and your life choices, beat sitting on the couch doing nothing by a long shot. I did try something new this week though, I ran barefoot. I've always been curious about doing it, and it's long had a sort of weird appeal for me ever since I found out about the Tarahumara Indians from Mexico. These guys can run for dozens of miles at a time, apparently even for hundreds of miles, and they do it completely barefoot or with very basic sandals on. I did more research on it and it turns out that most modern shoes are actually really bad for running in. Even those super expensive ones that Nike and Adidas charge you $100 for. All that artificial padding and other crap really severely affects the way your foot and leg muscles interact with the ground, while having just a plain old sandal or just barefoot can make running safer by avoiding injury and make it have less impact on your body. Turns out that nature finally tuned our feet for running over millions of years, and over the course of like a century we thought we could do a better job. Talk about human arrogance. Alright, so you know what? I kind of liked running barefoot. The difference wasn't immediately obvious, and yes, it did hurt running along the street barefoot. Luckily, we live in a very nice neighborhood next to the beach, so our streets aren't littered with broken glass and other crap, and traffic is light, but there's still plenty of rocks and pebbles to step on. But if you can weather it, you can learn to ignore it, just like our ancestors did in the bush when they chased down prey. By my 3rd day of doing it, I barely even noticed it anymore, though the girlfriend was very concerned about ringworm and made me scrub my feet thoroughly every time I returned. That's a good idea. Your feet get crazy dirty. It's hard to explain. While running barefoot may give you funny looks, it just feels better, more natural, and I noticed I was a lot less sore afterwards. I honestly think there's something to the science of running barefoot, and I'd recommend you try it even if it's just on a track. So how's my month of running been? Well, I lost a good amount of weight and I'm in pretty good shape. Hard to argue with the results, really. All that quarantine flab is gone and my stamina is through the roof. I have to say, I hate it a little less than I used to, but I don't really think I'll be making it a daily routine anymore now that I don't have to. However, I kind of think I'm gonna do it maybe 3 or 4 times a week, and all of it barefoot. Like I said earlier, the hardest part about any exercise is just getting over that hump. You gotta dig deep and just push through it, but I promise you can get on the other side of it and nothing feels better when you start seeing results. So if you're just watching and thinking of starting an exercise routine or struggling to maintain one, just push as hard as you can and take it day by day. I promise after a few weeks you'll start to see results and then it kind of becomes an addiction. And if you're doing this running challenge, please email us and let us know how it went. I love hearing all your guys' stories about self-improvement. For now, I'll catch you guys in the next challenge. Hello, Info fans! It's time for another challenge. Today we're revisiting our famous 72 Hours Homeless Challenge and giving our favorite lab rat a break. Instead of living on the street, he gets to live in his car. With all that extra luxury though, we're upping the stakes by making him live an entire week out of his car. When you really think about it, it's like a mini apartment on wheels. So stay tuned for yet another infographics challenge. Day 1. My Homeless for 72 Hours challenge ended up being one of my most popular and controversial, judging by the comments. Surprisingly though, most of the comments were overwhelmingly positive and we got a ton of emails from people thanking us for letting them know what it's like for homeless people, with everyone pledging to be more charitable going forward. Sometimes we do silly challenges and sometimes we do things like this to bring attention to real issues. So my new challenge is to live out a lifestyle that's sadly all too familiar for many young people today. Live out of my car for a week. With rent prices getting higher and higher every year in every large city in the world, and buying a house being completely out of the question for all but a small segment of the population, many people are being forced to live out of their cars for weeks, months, or even years at a time. Now I get to find out what that life's like. The rules are simple: no entering my comfortable apartment or even a friend's place for an entire week. Also, no spending cash. That's right, I start out only with the clothes on my back and a full tank of gas. I don't have to survive in my car for a week. I have to earn money and find food. It's urban survival all over again. So I took my car and drove to the east side of LA, as far as I could go from me and the girlfriend's cute apartment by the beach and the very gentrified neighborhood we live in. These streets are rough, and the first thing I set myself to was finding a way to earn money for the day. I hadn't eaten anything for breakfast, and I figured I wasn't going to get anything until lunch, if I made any money. I immediately headed for the hardware stores and truck rental places looking for a spot with day laborers waiting to get picked up for a job or two. I got some stares from the mostly Hispanic group, but eventually they warmed up to me thanks to me speaking some Spanish. As we waited for someone to come by looking for workers, we talked about life, family, and work. Sadly, I had to lie to keep my cover, and I really dislike being deceitful. It was well past noon and I'd been waiting for at least 5 hours before finally someone came up looking for people to help move office equipment around. I got picked up and loaded into the back of a pickup truck, then driven a few miles away to what looked like a new office building. And at this point I hadn't eaten or drank anything in about 16 hours and I was feeling it for sure. But by excusing myself to the bathroom, I was able to hydrate in the sink at least. We moved heavy furniture and boxes of supplies around for a good 6 hours, honest to God, back-breaking labor. At the end of our little work day, already late in the evening, we got $40 each and let out the front door. Not even a ride back to where we got picked up. Doing the math, we earned about $6.66 or $5.34 under the legal minimum wage in California. Then I had a good 4-mile walk back to where my car was parked on top of that, but most of the guys had even further to go than that. The guys I was with told me I was lucky. Usually they get $40 for 12 to 16-hour workday, and the only reason we got what we got today was because the guy was late coming to pick up workers. He must have been feeling generous too because he paid the normal rate instead of prorating it. By the time I got back to my car, it was really late and I was exhausted from not eating and moving really heavy stuff around for 6 hours. I hit up a drive-thru and found a quiet spot to park my car and then finally answered the million texts the girlfriend had very worldly been sending me throughout the day. I made a rule I wouldn't text back until the evening each night though, and was holding firm to it, which she hated. Day 2. I already know from my previous stint living on the streets for 72 hours that for homeless people, the day starts early, at least if you want to earn anything. I hit up a drive-thru again for some breakfast and made my way back to the same spot I'd gotten picked up for work at before. The same group of guys was still there, and because I felt bad about potentially taking one of their jobs, I bought them breakfast, which ate up most of my money. But you know what? In 6 more days, I'd be warm and comfortable at home again, so going hungry for a little bit if I didn't score work that day was a minor inconvenience compared to the way the guys lit up on seeing me bring them Egg McMuffins and hash browns. It'd been bothering me the entire night before that I could potentially be taking someone else's work for the day who definitely needed it more than me. So I resolved that after this challenge I'd make things right. The group had a sense of camaraderie that only comes from men caught together in adverse conditions. It reminded me a lot of the fellowship between guys in my old unit in the military. There was the usual good-natured ribbing, the complaining, and a lot of looking out for each other. What surprised me the most was how quickly the guys accepted me, despite being white and a complete stranger 24 hours ago. This day we got lucky and several people showed up early looking for help. I got picked along with 4 other guys by 2 college kids to help them move out of their apartment. What really bothered me about this job, though, was when one of the kids asked me in private if I could keep an eye on the other guys with me. I knew why he did it. I'm white, so he figured I was less likely to steal something from them. Being in a mixed-race relationship, I had to deal with racism from time to time, but this was the first time I experienced something quite like this. I needed the money, so I didn't say anything. But I can't help but wonder what in the world made him think, aside from the color of my skin, that I was any more trustworthy than my Hispanic workmates. I almost wanted to rob them blind just to teach them a lesson. Anyways, it was another long, hard day moving heavy crap around. First out of their apartment, then loading it into a truck, and then unpacking it at their new place. The 2 kids bought themselves lunch at one point, but didn't bother to ask if any of us wanted anything. When I commented on the fact to one of the older guys I was working with, he just shrugged his shoulders and said that's how it is. We worked from about 8 in the morning until about 7 at night and had no food the entire time. Thing is, this was perfectly normal for the guys I was working with. This challenge was starting to piss me off, and I think the girlfriend knew because she insisted on having a phone conversation that night. It was so nice to hear her voice, and yeah, I know it'd only been 48 hours, but what can I say? I'm one of those guys that doesn't need guys' night out or anything like that because she's my best friend. I can't imagine wanting to do anything without her. Day 3. On the night of day 2, I got woken up by cops who said that I couldn't park where I was at, which was outside some warehouse in an industrial area. As I would find out, one of the hardest parts of living out of your car is finding somewhere to park where people and police don't harass you or tell you to move your car. I get it, the cops are just doing their jobs, but city policy is clearly geared at keeping transients out of public sight. The college kids the day before paid us a whopping $50 for almost 12 hours of work, and as I was quickly finding out, what you make as a laborer is completely up to what people want to pay you. When you have no options, you just take what you can get. I went back to the guys again bright and early, bringing breakfast once more, though it basically ate up all the money I had, and talked to the older guy from the day before. He was sort of the leader in the group, I could tell, and I asked him about the pay and what he typically earns. He said on a good month he can make $1,000, but that's money that has to be split between himself, his wife, and his 3-year-old daughter. $1,000 in Los Angeles is insane. The average rent at a 1-bedroom apartment is well over that. Thing is, I knew from previous experience that you can make decent money panhandling if you find a good spot, and I asked him why he never considered doing that. He flat out rejected the idea, and he said to me, and I really hope I'm remembering his exact words correctly here, "If I do that, then I'm exactly what the people who say I'm a problem in this country think I am. I'm a worker. I came here to work, not to beg. One day someone will see that, and I'll get a real job." I've known a lot of brave guys in my time, people that I guess others would look up to and say, "Now that's a man." Let me tell you from firsthand experience, this was a man, and I instantly admired him for his conviction. I never asked my new friend if he was here legally or illegally, but I know this country could use a hell of a lot more people like him. The rest of the day was relatively uneventful. I was really moved by what my friend had said, and I refused when I got picked for jobs until everyone who was there before me got to work that day. But then, though, there was no more work, so I didn't earn anything that day. Having spent what I'd made on 2 or 3 shirts from a local Goodwill, so I didn't wear the same thing every day, and breakfast for the group of guys every morning, I was flat out of cash, so day 3, I didn't eat. Day 4. Got harassed again on the night of day 3 about where I was parking, twice this time. I ended up having to park in a really crappy alleyway, and there was another van there which I'm sure was someone else living out of their car. I stopped by a gas station and was refused to use the restroom unless I bought something. All I really wanted to do was just freshen up in the sink. I had literally no money on me though, and it was humiliating to admit I couldn't even afford to buy a candy bar and get the key to the bathroom. The clerk and some of the guests looked pretty disgusted at me, and honestly, those were looks I was starting to get a lot. I'm familiar with the looks though from my 72 hours homeless challenge. People look at you like you gross them out, or they do the opposite and literally pretend like you don't exist. It's extremely dehumanizing, and I'll admit I used to walk by homeless people and pretend they didn't exist too, because noticing them would have been uncomfortable. After my challenge, I changed though, and as people kept treating me like crap, I couldn't help but think of the irony. In my normal life, I always carry a 20 around and give it anytime someone asks me for some change. I also make sure to ask the person's name and then wish them well. Sure, getting a crisp 20 is great, I'm sure, but you wouldn't believe what humanizing someone and asking their name does for them when they're ignored or looked down on all day long. I finally found a bathroom that morning and freshened up as best I could, then hurried to the job spot a bit late. This time I didn't even have breakfast for myself, and when one of the guys found out I hadn't eaten anything since the day before yesterday, he immediately went and bought me a burrito from a street vendor, even though I know that was money he needed for himself. I'm a firm believer that who you are when the chips are all down is who you really are inside, and this group of guys looking for jobs outside a truck rental place that I'd normally ignore were turning out to be some of the highest integrity people I knew. It only made me madder to think about the day that I was asked to supervise because I was white and they weren't. We all got lucky and got to work that day, and well, not much to say about it except it was another 12-hour day, and again, we weren't given any food at lunch or given a break. At the end of the day, we all made $45, and once more, had to either walk or take a bus back to wherever we came from, not even a ride back to where we got picked up at. At least I got to eat that night. Day 5. A homeless guy broke my window on the night of day 4. I guess I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, or maybe the guy was being territorial, I don't know. He was very clearly out of his mind though and strung out on something because he yelled at me in my car and then threw a glass bottle, cracking the front windshield. Then he just calmly turned around and pushed a cart full of trash down the road. It was easy to get mad. Hell, I wanted to go after this guy, but then I stopped and thought about it. The guy was clearly out of it, probably completely unaware of what he was doing. Mental illness is endemic among homeless people. In fact, if you're mentally ill, you're exponentially more likely to end up homeless than if you're not. Add on top of that the drugs that the homeless people often take just to escape their miserable lives for a few hours, and well, you've got someone completely off their gourd who likely has no idea what they're doing. Can you really get mad at someone with no control of their actions? Sure, I can already hear the comments saying, well, you can control if you take drugs or not, which only shows that these people don't understand at all what it's like to need an escape from your daily hell, so bad that you'll turn to anything. Besides, I have insurance, it's literally not a big deal. My week living in the car had to be cut short on day 5, unfortunately. I'm prone to kidney stones and have been having them regularly since I was 20 years old, and I guess the dehydration, stress, and poor food the last week didn't help matters and may have encouraged a new stone to start its journey out of the kidneys and down my urinary tract. I woke up in the morning with extreme pain in my side and immediately recognized the symptoms of a kidney stone. The pain very quickly grew intolerable as I started to move around, and I knew I was in trouble. If you've never had a kidney stone, it's apparently one of the most painful things you can experience. I can attest to that. I barely managed to make it to an ER on my own, and I guess I was a little funky from not bathing regularly and working really hard over the last week, so the staff must have assumed I was homeless. They were pretty shocked when I showed them proof of very good medical insurance though, but I still had to wait an hour for an open bed in the back before getting any painkillers. Eventually I got put into bed and got my painkillers, which stopped the extreme pain. I totally forgotten to let the girlfriend know until they finally admitted me into the back, and she showed up in tears because she was so distraught. She plays at being a tough cookie, but she's soft as they come inside. So, what's my week taught me about living out of my car? Well, being homeless is tough, but most people understand that. What they probably don't understand is just how dehumanizing an experience it can be. Those day laborers and homeless people you walk by every day, they're real people, and odds are they're a lot better people than you imagine they are. A week later, I went back to find the guys at the truck rental place, and they were happy to see me. I admitted that I was doing this all for a job, and I split up into envelopes what I would have made for this episode and gave the money to them. I might have taken work from some of them over the week, so I had to make things right. I also put them in touch with a guy I know that hires and trains grips for film sets and pays a hell of a lot better wage than just $40 for a back-breaking 15-hour day. I can't help but think after this challenge about how there's all this talk about the American dream and how that dream is really well and truly busted when so many people are living out of their cars and others who are genuinely looking to be honest, hard workers have to resort to begging for jobs on the street. Ever since Game of Thrones The Mountain revealed his incredible 10,000 calorie daily diet, doing a 10,000 calorie meal has become a sort of ritual of passage for YouTube stars. That's when we thought, hey, wait, we've got a YouTube star of our own, everyone's favorite infographics lab rat, and since he's on the payroll, we can make him do whatever we want. So forget 10,000 calories in one meal, we're putting YouTube's most expendable writer on a 10K calorie diet for an entire week. Day 1. I'm excited for this challenge. I mean, I love eating. It's probably my favorite thing to do. In fact, I have to actively try to not eat just so I can stay in shape. This is literally the challenge I've been waiting for, and the challenge the girlfriend has probably liked the least. She told me that if I did this challenge, then it wouldn't be junk food. If I was going to try the Mountain's incredible diet, then I had better do it the same way he does, which means 10,000 calories of mostly healthy stuff and a whole lot of exercise. And you know what? I'm into it. I'm willing to give it a go, except there's a twist. Infographics is offering me another $200 incentive to put a quote fun spend end quote on the challenge for each additional mini challenge I undertake. There's 5 of these additional challenges, and I don't get to find out what they are until I open the envelope with each challenge inside it. For each one I manage to complete, I get an extra $200, which is a good thing because we did some calculations and this is gonna rake up one hell of a grocery bill. I mean, Infographics is footing the bill, I'm filing that under expenses, but still, it's going to be significant. We went to the grocery store yesterday and stocked up on beef, chicken, fish, a ton of pasta, milk, like 6 cartons of eggs, a literal pound of cheese. My 1-week cart looked like what we might go through in a month. What a delicious challenge ahead of me. Okay, so I figured I'd open 1 envelope a day, and the first one is simply replicate the Mountain's workout along with the diet. Sounds easy enough, I'll report it at the end of the day. End of day 1. Alright, I'm feeling, I don't know yet. Very, very full would be a good answer, but also my body's about ready to die from replicating the Mountain's workout. I guess it makes sense. You can't eat as much as this and not get crazy fat unless you're exercising and putting all those calories to use. So for breakfast I had 8 eggs, a bowl of oats, like 2 bushes worth of strawberries, blueberries, and avocados, and then it was off to a local CrossFit place to start the Mountain's workout. In case you haven't heard of CrossFit, and none of your friends do it because if they did, they'd be talking about it constantly and never shut up about how awesome it is. Basically, CrossFit's a lifestyle choice. I'm not kidding, that's literally what trainers say the moment you step through the door. You do a lot of strength and aerobic training, lose a bunch of weight, and get real strong. But you do it doing things like hitting tires with hammers or dragging tires around or flipping tires over and over again and again and again. Yeah, it's a lot of tire stuff. Though my personal favorite at this local CrossFit place, literally dragging a ship's anchor behind you as you sprint. I guess since we're so close to the beach, it's just keeping on theme. At least it's not a tire. Just kidding, they do that too. I mean, there's regular exercises too, like weight benches and free weights and stuff, but CrossFit, or at least CrossFit in LA, loves to improvise. So instead of a 50-pound weight, you throw around a giant industrial fire extinguisher. It's, well, I guess it's certainly more interesting than a normal workout when you're improvising everything you're lifting, dragging, or pushing. I should have probably taken notes, but I was so exhausted I would have completely forgotten to, but basically I feel I did every variation of every exercise known to man. And if this is how the Mountain trains, wow, no wonder he's a contender for World's Strongest Man. In order to stay on diet, I had to stop in the middle of the exercise and eat a ton of nuts and berries, more juicy calories down the gullet to fuel my Superman workout. When it was finally time for lunch, I had a ton of protein powder with full-fat milk, chicken pasta that I had meal prepped the day before, and copious amounts of yogurt. Honestly, I'm not sure how I'm keeping it all down, especially when half an hour later I was back to hurling heavy ropes around and flipping tires over for hours on end. By the time night came, I definitely earned an extra $200. Let me put it this way, the Mountain is the Mountain for a reason. The dude's a beast, and if you want to replicate his workout, maybe don't dive straight into it the way I did. I'm not sure I'll be able to get out of bed tomorrow. I feel a lot of sore muscles coming on. Day 2. I was right. I could barely move today. I effectively annihilated every muscle in my body yesterday, but the challenge must go on, and luckily eating doesn't require much exercise. I decided I could definitely do another challenge as long as it wasn't physical, and luckily for me this challenge was to eat 10,000 calories of vegetables and fruits. Wait, sorry, did I say lucky? I meant, you know what, it's not a word I'm allowed to say on YouTube because we'll get demonetized. You know what's better than the 5 to 7 servings of fruit and veggies you're supposed to get a day? 30 extra large servings, which is what me and the girlfriend very roughly estimated would take to accomplish 10,000 calories in one day. Okra, carrots, squash, oranges, beans of all sorts, corn. I think I ate every vegetable and or fruit known to man today. Honestly, the simplest thing to do was to go to the store and buy like 5 cans of Bush's baked beans. Those things weigh in at 150 calories per half a cup a serving, and you can pack a lot of servings into one of those restaurant-sized cans. Also, I fried every vegetable I could, though the girlfriend made me use olive oil, so that cut down on the calories. I even tried frying some of the fruit, just out of sheer eating boredom, but that was a terrible idea. I literally ate all day, because to get 10,000 calories worth of vegetables and fruits, you have to really beat the clock. Day 3. Okay, my body isn't quite as dead as it was yesterday, and I can move without every muscle screaming at me to get back into bed. I'm legitimately starting to dread breakfast. It's kind of become a chore. I have to figure out how to hit 10,000 calories every single day, so I have to break it down by meal. And I really hate math. Thankfully, eggs are pretty full of calories, so I whipped up a 6-egg omelet with all the fixins, and I do mean all the fixins, and then scarfed it down with 4 pieces of heavily buttered toast and chocolate milk. And that was like 1,500 calories right there. New day, new mini challenge. I opened up my envelope for the day, and my new challenge was eat 10,000 calories of bacon. Okay, I should have probably opened the envelope before having my first meal of the day, so I'm gonna have to eat an extra 1,500 calories today. So here's a surprise. I did some bacon research before heading off to the grocery store and discovered that baking bacon actually makes it have more calories than frying it in a pan. If someone can explain the science of that, I'm listening. Alright, so 1 slice of bacon is 43 calories, give or take, which meant I had to eat a whopping 233 slices throughout the day to hit 10 calories. That's a lot of bacon. And it was a lot of frying. Except I went with baking the bacon instead because A, it was easier and faster to cook dozens of slices at a time that way, and B, it has a higher calorie count than pan frying. I didn't just sit down and eat this mountain of bacon all at one go, of course. That would be insane. I just ate strips throughout my entire day. Literally all day long I was snacking on strips of bacon because that's how much bacon it takes to eat 10,000 calories. The girlfriend was terrified about the salt content, and she's probably right to worry, so I drank a ton of water too so that it would help flush it out of my system. Whether that was good enough or not, I suspect I'll find out in a week or two when the real health implications of all this are made apparent. Day 4. Okay, day 4. Only this time I opened the challenge envelope before I ate breakfast, which was a good call. Today I had to eat 10,000 calories of only liquid foods, and the challenge came with a ton of suggestions on what to drink because I think Infographics is as concerned about the salt content of all the bacon I ate on the previous day as the girlfriend was. Basically, today I'm not allowed an ounce of salt, and the girlfriend was there to make sure that this rule was enforced. Also, everything had to be liquid. I took out our juicer and prepared it early in the morning for what would probably be the hardest day of its life. So what did I eat? Fruit smoothies, vegetable smoothies, a whole lot of weight gain workout powders, which all taste disgusting. Honestly, today was the easiest day so far of eating 10,000 calories. The juices definitely went through me faster than solid food. Although it was by far the worst tasting day. Workout protein powders are like the best way to drink your way to 10 calories, but they all taste like elephant ass. How is it that we can put men on the moon, but we can't make protein shakes taste good? Day 5. Alright, Infographics definitely saved the best for last. But before I tell you about my 5th mini challenge, let me talk to you about your toilet. Your toilet is your friend. It's there when you're happy, it's there when you're sad. It literally takes all your crap and never complains, flushing it away and out of your life. You know what happens when you eat 10,000 calories a day for a whole week? Your toilet starts to not be your friend anymore. Your toilet gets tired of taking your crap. Again, literally. Your toilet breaks down. I imagine that the reason for this is obvious in most of you, our dear viewers' minds. 10,000 calories that get put into your body have to come back out somehow, and that's put a hell of a strain on our simple suburban toilet. I imagine that the Mountain and other mega athletes on these super diets must have industrial toilets especially built to handle the load. I went ahead and added the cost of a plumber to my expense report for the infographics. Their dumb challenge idea, their plumber bill as far as I'm concerned. Also, I swear I heard the plumber whisper a prayer before shutting the door behind him in the bathroom. So, mini challenge, not gonna lie, probably one of my favorites ever. Today I had to eat 10,000 calories of desserts. Yes, desserts, literally my favorite thing in the entire world. I was like a kid on Christmas morning, rushing to the grocery store to purchase any and every type of cake, cream puff, and muffin they had available. The girlfriend, of course, was not nearly so thrilled about all this, but this was my challenge and I was determined to complete it. I promised to buy her something nice with the extra $200. Or I would have, if I could have completed it. Listen, eating all the cake and sweets you can stuff in your mouth sounds easy until you realize just how much 10,000 calories really is. Also, the sugar content is insane, and by the time I had wolfed down a lemon meringue pie and a chocolate cheesecake and an entire sheet of cinnamon rolls, I was ready to have a diabetic coma. I managed to power my way through a coconut cream pie and another cheesecake before I had to call it quits. By our approximation, I hit 8,000 calories but simply couldn't stomach 2,000 more. Honestly, I think it's all that fat and sugar content, or maybe my body just can't handle extreme amounts of food anymore. Either way, I had to fight not to vomit everything I'd eaten over the course of the day up, and ultimately, I put up my white flag and declared defeat. I didn't quite make it, but I did finish 4 out of 5 mini challenges and got to experience the insanity of a super diet. Also, I ate our entire month's grocery shopping in just 1 week, and I'm pretty sure I can't ever speak to our plumber. Now it's time to take it easy and work off the 4 pounds I gained in just this 1 week. The girlfriend is picking the menu for the rest of the month, and she promised plenty of fruits and veggies to fix all the damage this diet did on my body, and you know what? I'm okay with that. Hey Info fans, today we've got a special treat for you. Because our favorite lab rat is currently recuperating from one of his latest challenges, we decided that it was the perfect time to give him something easy to do. So we asked him to go over the last year's worth of challenges and pick out some mean, funny, or just favorite comments he came across and share his views. That's right, this is the clapback episode, except not really because turns out he's too nice for that. But stay tuned because your comment may be the one that gets a reply in this episode of Challenge Respond to the Comments Part 1. Alright, well this is definitely a bit unusual. I've been talking with the infographic show about my future participation in challenges. If you've seen the Surviving 72 Hours Alone in the Forest challenge, it kind of made me rethink stuff after the bear incident. I know, it seems like I'm out here kind of winging it, but that's not true at all, and contrary to what the girlfriend and a lot of people on YouTube seem to think, safety is pretty important to me. Running into a bear while unarmed was definitely not safe. But I have to admit I do miss doing challenges, even the unsafe ones. I guess I've always been drawn to taking risks, and that really explains a lot in my life. Even though the girlfriend wanted me to scale back, she understood that it kind of makes me happy to get out there and do these weird / sometimes unsafe things. So she did what her amazing self typically does and supported me 100%. Then immediately rolled up her sleeves, dragged the producers of the infographic show into a meeting, and negotiated what we'll be calling hazard pay. I feel sorry for the producers. When she wants something, she's hell on wheels, and I knew she was perfectly willing to keep everyone locked up in that meeting for days if that's what it took. Honestly, she's probably my best professional asset, which is why I let her handle all the money matters. So I guess the big announcement here is there's nothing to fear. I'm back for another season of challenges, and to be honest, I've kind of been bored without them. And my first official new challenge is to go over the comments section of some of my past vids and address the mean, the nice, and the ugly. Hey, it beats using only public restrooms for 72 hours. Now, typically, you need a hazmat suit to delve into a comment section online, but I gotta say, you guys are overwhelmingly positive and supportive, even with each other. I was expecting a million fights and negative comments, but I was definitely surprised. So here we go. Time to respond to some of my favorites. Number 1. Hearing, "This might be my last challenge episode" almost killed me. Almost died when he said this might be his last challenge. We love you, man. Honestly, same. I'm just happy I can say I grew up with him. Oh man, that 72 hours in the forest episode definitely got dangerous. And when I got home, I had to seriously rethink if I'd continue doing these challenges. Running into a wild bear is up there on my list of favorite things to not do while in the woods, especially when it's fall and the bear is clearly a bit on the skinny side. Like I said in the episode, skinny bears in the fall are extra dangerous because they're desperate to add on pounds. The girlfriend was pretty upset when she found out, but surprisingly, it was her who made a strong case for not quitting. She told me, "If you can share your experiences, then maybe you can help someone not get hurt." It was a good point, but I think deep down inside, she really just wanted me to keep doing something she knew made me very happy. Or she wanted to keep me from doing other more dangerous things. I have a friend in the media who asked me if I'd be interested in doing press correspondence overseas in, well, the very not nice parts of the world. Seeing these comments though made me aw a little in real life. And even the girlfriend was smiling from ear to ear. We had no idea you guys cared so much. We're just normal people, well, at least the girlfriend is, and occasionally have to go through silly things. Man, you guys are great, and hopefully you're happy to hear that no, I won't be quitting. Number 2. The screaming was foxes 100%. Younger foxes sound like children crying. It could have also been mountain lions. These 2 comments are also from the 72 Hours Alone in the Forest challenge. If you remember or haven't seen it, in the middle of the night I started hearing the strangest howls, screams, and roars I've ever heard in my life. Now what was strange about it at the time is that I've been in the wild a lot through my career and my personal life, from camping in the Pacific Northwest for fun to Uncle Sam sending me to not-so-fun camping trips to Africa and the Middle East. but those sounds were like nothing I've ever heard. I've heard foxes before, and yeah, it scared the crap out of me the first time because they sound so human-like sometimes. I've never heard a mountain lion personally, but we got recordings of them to listen to along with other dangerous animals during some of our survival training in the military. You basically have to learn the sounds that specific animals make in different parts of the world, so you're aware of them during an op. The thing about these sounds was that they sounded nothing at all like that. There was one animal screeching horribly. It sounded like he was only a few miles away. They were short, intense screeches like a giant owl from hell that's constipated and trying to pass a turd. The weirdest part was that the screeches were responded to from a completely different direction with a low, long howl of sorts. Then whatever was screeching was silent for a moment and screeched back one short screech. Then the other animal gave off a shorter howl in response. There were a few yips and at one point even a roar, though the roar sounded really far away. To be honest, it was terrifying. They just didn't sound like regular animals. The location I was at was pretty remote along the Pacific Northwest coast, like you have to use a four-wheel drive truck through a trail that's barely a road to get there. I didn't want to accidentally run into anyone. People have joked that it was a Bigfoot, but I guess I'd have to see and hear a Bigfoot to know for sure. Whatever it was, I'm glad it was a bear and not them that showed up to my camp. Number 3. I just know that he's going to mention his military training. I saw a lot of these comments across the vids I looked at, and here's the thing. The episodes are obviously at least partly autobiographical. If you've watched all of the episodes, or at least a lot, then you probably already know a lot of things about my personal life. But there's things I have to repeat because A, they are important to the challenge, and B, there's always new viewers watching an episode who may have no idea who I am or where I come from. It's definitely not a weird flex. I don't even like bringing it up as I'm getting to know new people, and I don't like talking specifics unless I can remain anonymous. It's just part of the show. Number 4. I wonder when he's going to start calling the girlfriend the wife. Next challenge, most epic way to propose to girlfriend. Okay, so I saw a lot of these. And if you're a fan of the show, you've probably already heard that me and the girlfriend were never really into the marriage thing. We know what we've got, and neither of us are going anywhere. You know how you know when you really love someone? I mean, really love someone, like the type of love that makes you suddenly stop in the middle of dinner on your 4th date and just stare at the person while the world fades away, and you review every bad thing that's ever happened in your life, and you just say to yourself, it was all worth it, it all led to you. Well, you know you really love someone when it doesn't matter the hells you've been through before, or the many times you were scared for your own life. You really love someone when the world becomes a terrifying place because a million things can happen to take that person out of it and away from you forever. Real love is questioning if you ever want to go on without her or him. And you don't really need a formal marriage for that. At least that's what we've always thought, and well, maybe things change. Number 5. Already mentioned the girlfriend 2 times at 1 minute 13 seconds. I'm out. Why is he so obsessed with his girlfriend? Still flexing his girlfriend, is he? So these types of comments I consider along the lines of the previous military comment before. There's 2 responses to these comments I'd like to make. First, the initial description of the challenge video's concept I got was to carefully record how each affected me and my life. Now, when you're in a committed relationship and live together, your significant other is part of that life. Naturally, the challenges are going to affect her too. So recording her response isn't a flex, it's part of what you're tuning in for. My second response is that there's a common thread in the comments like this, and it kinda makes me sad, to be honest. These comments clearly come from insecure people who are threatened by the life of a complete stranger, and their response is to lash out in the only way they can: negative comments. You see it everywhere. Someone has, is, or does something, and all the insecure people take it to the comments section. It's the only power they have. When someone posts a comment like this, it really only speaks about them. Honestly, I wish I could do something for you guys. Maybe the show should do a confidence building video, or a real how to attract women and not a lame bro pickup artist fake crap video. I hate the thought of anyone being lonely for whatever reason, but if you want to change, then it starts with you. And let me tell you, maturity goes a long way towards attracting a partner, and not making comments like this is a solid first step on that road. Number 6. If you don't do a face reveal, 6ix9ine will snitch on you. Okay, that was legitimately one of the funniest comments I read during the whole thing. If you don't get it, you probably need to look up who 6ix9ine is and why he became so infamous. Obviously, the show gets a lot of emails and comments asking for a face reveal, and we did address this in one of our previous videos. The thing is that we're really not comfortable with our real identities being shown, even just first names. Believe me, I'm not ignorant of how little time it would take to track down our identities with just a first name and some general details by dedicated internet sleuths. If you type in infographic show to Google, then face, host, and staff are some of the recommended searches. For the girlfriend, she's got her professional life to worry about, and for me, well, I'm already uncomfortable with how huge the challenge community has gotten. I started counting views just for the fun of it, and I stopped at 15 million. And I still had a lot of episodes to go. Honestly, I'm just a normal guy. The girlfriend's used to being in front of the cameras, but I've always been happy to be behind the scenes. I will say this, if you watch our Create the Perfect Life in The Sims challenge, then that's probably the closest you'll get to a face reveal. I seriously spent like 3 minutes on my sim and 30 minutes on hers, so you can probably have a better idea of what she looks like than I do. But the resemblance is uncanny. I think I even said in that video that I kinda got a crush on her sim. Is that weird? To get a crush on the sim you created to look just like your girlfriend? Number 7. Why didn't he just record with GoPro? This comment was also in response to the 72 hours alone in the forest challenge. At the start of that vid, I talked about how I had proposed we get a dedicated camera guy and turn this whole thing into more of a documentary style format using real footage. But the costs involved are, well, kinda crazy if you want to do it professionally. The thing about this comment is that it never really crossed my mind. Seriously, totally blanked on just wearing a GoPro. Great suggestion, sadly too late. As we contemplated the future of the challenge series, we talked about going real, but in the end, my concerns over privacy for myself and the girlfriend made a pretty strong case for not doing that. Honestly, I kinda like hiding behind animation and the narrator. I'm not keen on even just having my life stalked online. For now, that's just how it'll have to be, but hey, write to your local TV stations, and if you can get a TV network to pay us a few $1,000,000 for our show, I'll go on TV all you want. I'll go on every TV show there is. I will physically live inside your TV set if you pay me enough. But for now, yeah, animation it is. Number 8. This is fake. This guy isn't even a real. Honestly, there's a lot of comments like this, and well, last time I checked I was real. But can anyone really prove they're real? See, eventually we will be able to create computers advanced enough to recreate the human brain digitally, and once we have a computer able to run thousands, even millions of these simulations simultaneously, well, you could create a complete digital world. With enough computing power, you could create an entire digital universe, and not a single being that inhabits it would ever suspect it was all fake unless you told it. Or there could only be one real being in the entire world because the entire world is a simulation run by an artificial intelligence for the benefit of one real human that logs in to play the coolest, latest game pre-World War III Earth. You only think you're real because the programmers need you to act like you are for the enjoyment of one person playing the simulation who is actually real. The worst part? Simulations like that could be run at many times normal speed, so the person playing this game could simulate an entire lifetime over his lunch break at work. That's right, you may be nothing more than a future and much lamer version of Overwatch. You're nothing more than someone's lunch break. Alright guys, that's it for now, but stay tuned for more responses as I dig through more of the comments on our videos. Did I mention one of your comments? Want to see me react to one of your comments? Only way to do that is to, well, comment. But it'd be nice if you liked and subscribed too while you're at it. Talk to you guys again soon, and seriously, you guys really are the best. It's a scary time to be alive when it seems like there's a new virus outbreak every other month. We can't help but think, what if a virus got truly out of control? And what is life like for the unfortunate souls that get stuck in quarantine, forced to live their lives separated from their loved ones? Well, rather than try and reach out to any patients who have been quarantined like a true journalistic outfit, we decided instead it'd be funny. More enlightening if we tasked everyone's favorite infographics lab rat with living in quarantine for a full week. Day 1. You know what? I don't even hate this challenge. In fact, I'm kind of excited. Ever since I saw that early Jake Gyllenhaal movie, Bubble Boy, I've been wondering just what in the world it would be like to live quarantined off from the rest of society. I know it won't be any picnic, but I guess curiosity's definitely got my cat, and I don't know, I'm just kind of excited. I had to coordinate this one with infographics before doing it because I told them if I was going to live in quarantine for a week, I was going to do it right, and that meant one thing: plastic sheeting. Lots of it, and I mean a lot. The solution turned out to be a construction supplier here in town, which even delivered the 200-foot rolls of plastic sheeting straight to my doorstep. You heard that right. 200 feet of plastic sheeting, half a millimeter thick per roll, and I got 3 of them. Of course, I immediately realized I had seriously overestimated how much plastic I'd need, but don't you worry, I will definitely find a use for all this plastic. I solemnly vow not to dump it in the ocean where it'll murder the sea turtles. So I got to work as soon as the girlfriend left the house to go to a shoot she'd scheduled. I knew she'd be gone for at least 14 to 15 hours. Yeah, people in the entertainment industry work some absolutely brutal hours. Anyway, that gave me more than enough time to put my plan into motion. I have to live in quarantine, which means I can't come into contact with the outside world under any circumstances. Well, with a few reasonable exceptions. I don't much feel like living in a bubble or being stuck in one room, so I got creative. Our new apartment we just moved into is a cute little one-bedroom place with a large living room, attached kitchen, and small dining room area. It's all kind of an open floor plan except for the bedroom, so there's very few walls. I kind of love how open it is, to be honest, and the location's great. It's literally like 2 blocks from the beach. Good thing the girlfriend makes like 10 times the money I do, or the only rent we could afford in this area would be for a shoebox. What I really like about the place for this challenge, though, is how easy it's going to be to convert into a relatively comfortable quarantine area. Along with all that plastic, I had infographics spring for a ton of duct tape, like 15 rolls in total. The first thing I did was attach plastic sheeting to the wall at the head of our bed, and then I ran it to the doorway, snaking it a bit to the left because our bedroom door is on the left. Then out to the living room and beyond. In essence, when I was done putting up multiple layers of plastic, I had split the room, including the bed, completely in 2. Then I had to tear half of it down when I realized I had left her massively heavy makeup desk thingy on my side of the quarantine zone. It's where she sits and does her makeup every morning, and so I had to shove that thing, which I'm pretty sure is made of solid granite, to her side of the room, and then I put the sheeting back up and moved on to the living room. From the living room, I extended the sheeting toward the kitchen, but here I had a dilemma. I couldn't wall off the stove and the refrigerator or she wouldn't be able to fix herself any food for a week, and I probably shouldn't have plastic anywhere near the stove. So I aborted my plans to extend to the kitchen and just settled on splitting off half to the living room. I ran the plastic straight through the middle of the couch so I could have a place to sit comfortably, and then fastened it to the wall on the right side of the TV. All in all, I had a decent living area set up and wouldn't be stuck in one tiny room for the entire week, which should help with the stir craziness. Now I am officially sealed into one half of the apartment, and I guess I have nothing to do but wait the week out. See you guys at my midweek check-in. Day 3. Okay, so I didn't think some things through completely. But first, let's rewind to day 1 real quick. I hadn't told the girlfriend about the challenge. It's kind of become a little game for her to guess or figure out what my new challenges are, except, well, this one was pretty obvious the moment she opened the door. She came in and was immediately greeted by our dog, who had spent half the day whining on the other side of the plastic because he couldn't get to me anymore. Yeah, that kind of hurt a little. Anyway, after she greeted our dog, she looked up and, well, she didn't say anything. Her jaw just kind of slowly dropped as she took in our new, cute apartment, which was separated nearly in half with plastic sheeting. She didn't really say anything, just slowly made her way to the bedroom door, looked inside, saw the bed was also split in half with plastic, and just said, "Of course, I mean, it makes total sense." Then she sat down on her half of the couch and finally looked over at the bathroom and said, "You know, the bathroom's on my side of the plastic, right?" I told her, "Yeah, of course, that's why I got..." And she immediately cut me off with a very stern no. To make a long story short, well, this living in quarantine is in no way going to involve me using the bathroom indoors unless it's in our actual toilet. I mean, I bought plastic bags and kitty litter in a big bucket, but oh boy, she was not having it. She made it extremely clear there was only one way I'd be using the bathroom. So, Infographics is going to have to deal with me making an exception to my quarantine challenge that I get to leave my plastic world for a number 1 and a number 2. And if they have a problem with it, well, they can take it up with her, although I seriously don't recommend it. So yeah, the girlfriend wasn't too pleased with me or the show for turning her cute little brand new apartment into a quarantine zone, to say the least. But it turns out I kinda didn't think things through completely. The TV, for example. I left the remote outside the plastic because, of course, I wanted my dear sweet girlfriend to be able to unwind and watch TV, but that also means it's out of reach for me and I can't change the channel all day long. Now, luckily I managed to worm the PlayStation onto my side of the plastic, so I have that, but I left every single DVD and game on the outside, so unless I'm playing something on the hard drive already, forget about it. Also, in what is absolutely becoming a recurring theme, I forgot how to deal with food delivery. Obviously, I can't cook, so the girlfriend very graciously slides me things like sandwiches through a little slit I built in the plastic and hot meals whenever she's home. I guess that's kinda cheating a little bit, but hey, if you want the real deal, go ahead and hit up the infographics to spring for a full-time in-home bubble boy habitat situation. Except, of course, the girlfriend would probably murder everyone involved in that little shenanigan. Thing is, I'll occasionally need to order delivery. Like today, for instance, when I got hungry and the girlfriend was back on set for a billion hours, except I totally forgot about being able to go to the front door. So I got creative. I ordered my delivery and then called the drivers when they arrived and directed them to an open window on the quarantine side of the apartment. I guess opening a window is cheating too, but you know what else I realized I forgot? Cutting off all that airflow is a good way to damn near asphyxiate yourself in plastic, so an open window became a necessity. Anyway, the driver was pretty cool about it, but was definitely weirded out by the whole thing. Good to know I'm already setting a bad precedent with local delivery drivers in our new place. Day 7. I don't know why I was excited about this challenge in the first place, because let me tell you, living like a bubble boy absolutely sucks. The lack of proper ventilation meant that my side of the apartment got extremely hot and humid from all my breathing. And for the last 7 days, I've had to try to comfort my dog from afar because he was very upset that I was living on the other side of several sheets of plastic from him. I have to admit, I missed him really bad. Turns out the girlfriend missed me too. On day 4, as we both lay in bed separated by plastic, she just turned over toward me and looked really sad. She was kind of quiet and said that she really didn't like living like this, so close together but separated by all the plastic. Then she just softly said, "I really miss you." It felt like a punch in the gut, to be honest with you. When we moved to this new place, we shuffled our lives around so that we would spend less time apart from each other. Sometime around the Alone in the Woods challenge, we both had a really long talk and decided that what we really wanted in our life, more than our own careers and success and whatever, was to be with each other. So we agreed to make it a priority, which really just means that she agreed to stop accepting jobs that send her out of town for days or weeks at a time. She made a pretty big sacrifice, and this silly challenge reminded me of why. In the end, when we look back on our lives, neither of us want to regret even the smallest amount of time spent apart that we really didn't have to. When she told me she missed me that night, I almost tore down the plastic just so I could hold her again. Maybe I do take these silly challenges too seriously, but one of the reasons I do is how they broaden my horizons. I've realized this over the last week, how terrible it really is for people who have to live in quarantine for real. Not just sick people, but even people who have to live in special environments or can't spend too much time around other people. Maybe even can't rest in the arms of someone they love because of how weak their immune systems are. I have such a new appreciation for normal life and a deep respect for the strength it takes to live such a difficult life. So, how do I sum up the rest of my week? Well, uncomfortable, for one. Without proper ventilation, my side of the apartment got really hot and muggy, and good thing I had 2 windows I could open. I found myself staring out the window at the outside world a lot. Even just listening to people walking by outside or cars going by was sort of exciting for me and depressing. I kept imagining all the people just walking around, going about their day, and me stuck in this plastic cocoon. I really couldn't live my entire life like this. I learned that there was a real-life bubble boy, David Vetter, with a severe immunodeficiency disorder. He ended up dying at age 12, but until then, he lived in a completely bubble environment. NASA ended up designing a bubble habitat for David, and he lived inside a series of connected bubble environments. It wasn't until he was 6 years old that once more, thanks to NASA, he got to go outside, but he had to be inside a bubble suit of sorts. Until he was able to get into that suit and leave his bubble habitat, his mother had never even been able to hold him in her arms. David died after contracting a virus, and his mother only ever got to hug him without plastic between them after he was already dead. I'm not gonna pretend I didn't cry when I read about David's story, and if there's a bright side, it's that his disease has been cured by modern therapies, largely thanks to the blood that he donated. I'm done living in quarantine, and yes, the whole thing has been extremely uncomfortable and tedious, but the hardest part about it, and maybe the hardest thing I've ever had to do, was live my life with the person I love most in the world always just a few inches away from me, on the other side of impenetrable plastic. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think I'm done writing and I'm gonna go hold the woman I love in my arms for a very long time. David, wherever you are now, this episode's for you. COVID has been a real problem for us here at the Infographic Show. As you probably noticed, we haven't put many challenge episodes out in the last 9 months or so, and well, that's because it's really hard to challenge our least important writer and your favorite lab rat to do anything because he can't be around people. Then we got the idea, what if we sent him somewhere with no people? So we sent him to go live 3 days out in the desert. where the only things he could infect with COVID were spiders, scorpions, and dangerous snakes. Alright fans, I gotta say, it's good to be back and doing challenges again. COVID has made life unbearably boring. And let me tell you, nothing tests your love quite like forced quarantine together. Luckily, the girlfriend and I are each other's best friends, but when I got the challenge to go out into the desert for 3 days, well, let's just say she was less concerned with my safety than she's been in the past. So, Infographics sent me out to the desert for 3 days, and seeing as I'm writing this, I obviously survived. How did it go down? Well, in some ways, easier than expected. In others, much more difficult. The premise was simple. I got dropped off at a spot somewhere out in the Nevada desert just over the border from California. My pickup location was exactly 60 miles from my drop-off location, and I had only a map and a compass to get to my pickup. I wasn't dropped off nearly naked like I was when I did my forest survival because the desert is much more lethal than the forest, so I got a few essentials. I got exactly 2 canteens of water, totaling 4 quarts. Seeing as doctors recommend you drink 3 quarts of water a day, you can already see a problem with that math. The name of the game would be conservation. I also got 1 single and very thin emergency blanket, along with a hunting knife because the California and Nevada desert have coyotes. Though, me personally, I'm far more worried about feral pigs. Any hunter in the world will tell you they're more scared of wild hogs or feral pigs than they are of even bears, because those things are absolutely vicious. Lastly, I had a signaling mirror in case things get really bad. Day 1, I got dropped off at my location at 6 p.m. and from that moment on, I had 72 hours to get to my pickup 60 miles away. Now right off the bat, let me make a disclaimer I made on my last survival video. Do not try this if you don't have survival training. I have years of experience in the world's deserts because apparently America doesn't like to pick fights with nice tropical nations anymore. And believe me, this is not for the unprepared. I got dropped off near sunset because when you're in the desert, you want to flip your sleep schedule. People often make the mistake of thinking you have to conserve water in the desert, but the truth is it's far more efficient to conserve sweat. That means traveling at night and taking shelter during the hot day. And if you're out in the desert in the wintertime, you should still be prepared for some very high temperatures. My small pack made traveling light, which was good, because I wanted to move fast enough to make good time while identifying good shelter to use during the day. My plan was to move for 8 hours, then spend 2 hours moving slower and finding shelter. I was supposed to be mirroring a hiker or off-roader who wasn't planning for a long trip, so I wasn't allowed to bring extra clothes or things like that. Instead, I wore jeans and a simple outdoors white long-sleeve shirt. When you think desert, you think heat. And rightly so, but at night it can get extremely cold, especially in Nevada, where the winter temperature can swing from as high as 90s to below freezing in 24 hours. The first night did not disappoint, and I started shivering pretty quickly, so I wrapped myself in the survival blanket. These blankets are very light and made out of reflective foil, but they're made to reflect the heat and hold it in, much like the way you'd wrap a potato in foil before throwing it in the oven. You might notice I wasn't given any food, and that was to reflect a real survival situation. But also, food is a low priority for you in desert survival. In fact, it might get you killed. That's because digestion is actually very water intensive and can seriously eat up your water budget. In normal survival situations, you might have heard it's better to do lots of small snacks throughout the day to keep your energy up, over eating one big meal. And that's true to an extent. In the desert, you gotta plan in advance, and it's better to save up small snacks to have one single big meal every few days than to kickstart digestion many times throughout the day by ingesting individual snacks. Water is everything in desert survival. And that brings me to sweat. Most people think that humans are not very well adapted to surviving in the desert, but the opposite is actually true. Humans do quite well in the desert as long as they have access to water. Our omnivore diet allows us to eat a variety of things found in the desert, where restrictive diets can spell disaster. And our ability to sweat along with the lack of body hair is an extremely efficient cooling system. When water is limited though, sweat is your enemy. There are 2 times you don't want to sweat: in low temperatures and when water is sparse. In Arctic survival, if you sweat you die because hypothermia can set in. In the desert, there's less, but a still very real risk of hypothermia at night. But sweating means losing valuable water. So as I hiked along, I had to check myself to keep only a moderate pace and take frequent rest breaks to avoid sweating. Every single drop of sweat is wasted water, and a good survivalist will budget every drop. As I moved along, I kept an eye on the stars for direction. Compasses are great, but they're prone to magnetic interference in the environment. If you know how to navigate using the stars, you'll find you can maintain extremely accurate bearings. Simply pull out your compass every 30 minutes or so to double-check yourself. Speaking of stars, you can see every single one of them if you go far enough out into the desert. It's honestly incredible and well worth a day trip for any of you city slickers that have never seen the full majesty of the entire Milky Way on display. As morning approached, I started looking for shelter. Daytime shelter is extremely important in the desert, with the main goal being to keep yourself out of the sun as much as possible. The only problem was that this part of the desert was almost completely flat, which only really left me with one very bad option. I found a small wadi and started digging into the soft soil at the bottom, breaking up the harder parts of the ground with my knife. This was strenuous work given I only had my hands and a knife, and I was sweating, which was bad. But if you don't get shelter, it'd be even worse. I dug down a solid 1.5 feet into the ground right next to where the wadi started to bank up sharply. Then took my survival blanket and turned it shiny silver side outward, and using rocks set it up so it covered the hole, with one side on the ground next to me on the hole, and the other side about 2 feet above me on the steep bank of the wadi. Basically, I made a rough tent, with 2 large openings I could slide into and would work to keep the air circulating. The silver reflective side would reflect the sun's rays and keep me from overheating, but the real key with this type of shelter is to keep the survival blanket off your body, or else you're basically insulating yourself. That's why digging into the side of a wadi or a rise in the ground is critical. Crawling into my hole, I settled in for my first desert day sleep in about 8 years. I took a very long sip from my water. Another desert survival myth is that you should do small sips at a time. Don't, this just ends up being wasteful. Take big, long drinks when you really need them. Being my first day, I could feel light dehydration, but nothing too serious. I still had 1.5 canteens left. I'd almost certainly run out of water before the end of the 3rd day, but if I budgeted right, I shouldn't be running the risk of serious dehydration. Sleeping during the day in the desert is not easy, to say the least. But I long ago learned to snooze most places. I stayed put in my hole the entire day with the temperature easily climbing into the high 80s. Good thing global warming's a myth, huh? Also, 2 scorpions crawled into my sleeping hole, deciding that it was a good place to hide from the sun. I crushed both their heads, bit off the stingers, and threw them in my pack. If I got enough scorpions and other bugs, they'd make a good snack once I had a sizable enough meal that it was worth using up the water to eat it. That's another thing about survival, you have to be an opportunist. You don't know what tomorrow will bring, so if an opportunity for materials or food presents itself, take it. Today I got 2 scorpions. I might not find anything else to eat for the next 2 days. Or my pickup might get into an accident and leave me stranded for days more than I planned. Always be planning ahead and always be opportunistic. Another good reason to sleep as much as you can is because, well, laying in a hole is boring AF. And that's another military survival tip for you. Sleep as much as you can. Not just for energy, but also to avoid mind-numbing boredom. As the sun started to go down, I very happily crawled out of my hole. My stomach was rumbling, but I wasn't about to waste water on digestion. You can easily survive while hungry. Most people just don't like the uncomfortable feeling of slow starvation. By my estimate, I made around 22 miles the first night, which was really good progress. The cool temperature helped me control my sweating, allowing me to push myself harder. Also, I'm in good shape, traveling light, and the desert was really flat. I haven't pushed myself this hard in a while though, and I'll admit, COVID quarantine has made me kind of soft around the belly, as the girlfriend is fond of pointing out, as she pokes at me and makes the Pillsbury Doughboy giggle. I could feel blisters forming on my feet, but I'd have to tough it out. The second night was pretty uneventful, to be honest. The desert was so sparsely populated that wildlife isn't much of a threat, at least until you start looking for shelter, because that's basically what it too is doing. The crystal clear night sky is something amazing, and you can see every single star in the sky, and maybe I saw something more. Listen, I'm not one of those UFO types, and I think the idea of aliens flying across the galaxy just to flash some lights in our sky is pretty stupid, but I swear I saw a light for a while that seemed to be moving, well, unnaturally. Then it just faded away. Weird, but I reminded myself that Area 51 is also in Nevada, so who knows what I saw. Speaking of wilderness, here's a special announcement for all you cryptid fans. This spring, I'll be officially undertaking a hunt for Bigfoot, and because you guys have been asking for it, yes, it will feature real camera footage and not just animation. I'll be recording my trip and my findings for all your viewing pleasure. We saw all the comments you guys made in my forest survival video about possibly hearing Bigfoot, and the infographic show was like, hey, why don't you go find one? So I said sure, and we carefully researched a site in Oregon that's super remote and booming with reported Bigfoot activity. Will the girlfriend be making an appearance? Maybe. I still haven't convinced her yet. She's not really the camping type. But even if I don't get Bigfoot on camera, I'll at least be able to put to rest all those rumors in the comments section that I'm not a real person. Do you know how weird it is to have people say that you don't exist? Anyway, stay tuned for that challenge episode dropping early this summer, as long as Oregon's forests don't go up in flames like last summer. Alright, so night 2 I made really good progress thanks to the desert being so flat and featureless. The day had really taken its toll on me though, and by the time dawn came around I had only a half a canteen of water left. I knew I'd inevitably sweat during the day no matter how much I tried to stay out of the sun, so day 3 I'd likely be running with 0 water. Pushing myself as hard as I was, that was not good news. You can go without water for 3 days before running the risk of deadly dehydration, but that's if you're not really doing much physical activity. I still had over 20 miles to go and I could definitely feel the effects of dehydration from my water rationing. I got supremely lucky on the dawn of day 3 and found a small cave. Well, it was more like a rocky outcropping with a huge slab of rock jutting out from the side of a large bluff. It was deep enough that I'd be able to stay out of the sun, but the entire time I was worried about the bluff coming down on top of me because your mind really loves to act irrationally. During the day, I'd made it a point to take my shirt off and lick the inner armpit areas. Yes, this sounds disgusting, but it was important that I get some salt back into my system. Seeing as all I'd brought was water, I considered eating my 2 scorpions, but they were tiny. Maybe if I'd had 5 or 6 of them, they'd make a decent meal. Despite my rumbling stomach, it just wasn't worth it to burn water for 2 quick bites. During the day, I'd heard what's probably the most terrifying sound you can hear in the American Southwest: bees. Not just any bees though. These desert-dwelling bees were almost certainly the dreaded Africanized honeybees or killer bees. These bees are incredibly ornery and vicious about attacking anything that disturbs them. Them flying around in a massive swarm during the winter could only mean one thing though. Something had messed up wherever they had made their hive, meaning they'd be super angry. Luckily for me, the bees went on their happy, murdery way, leaving me completely alone. I got an early start on night 3, walking before the sun was fully down and drinking the very last of my water. Now survival was serious. If I missed my pickup for some reason, or if the person picking me up got into an accident and couldn't come, I could be out here alone for days. I'm never really worried in a survival situation until I've run out of water. That's when things get deadly serious. You might have heard that you can cut open cacti and drink the water inside, and this is wrong. Any moisture you find is going to be very alkaline and likely to make you sick, leading to vomiting or diarrhea, both things that are extremely costly in terms of water. You probably heard you can drink your own pee in an emergency, and I don't care what Bear Grylls tells you, don't. Seriously, there's a reason pee is a waste product because it's full of waste. Drinking your pee will just put all the junk your body filtered back inside of you, necessitating even more water to get it back out again. The best way to find water in the desert is to watch for large flocks of birds in the sky. Individual birds are likely specialized for desert survival, but flocks means it's a bird species that's likely transiting the area. That means they'll be looking for water too. Even better though is finding anything green. You might not find any surface water, but dig down a few inches and you'll likely hit water. You can do the same in dried up riverbeds, though you might have to dig a foot or more. Always remember that you're on a water budget though, and digging means sweating. If you find nothing after a few inches, maybe switch locations. Or just give it up and focus on moving, if your survival depends on you getting somewhere other than where you are. Most times in a survival situation, it's best to just stay put and make yourself as visible as possible. You probably also heard about solar stills. If you have the materials to build one, it's not a terrible idea to throw one together. Don't expect much out of it though. Even under the best of conditions, you'll get little more than a sip. If you can catch large bugs, popping them open and sucking out their innards can get you a bit of fluids. Just try not to actually eat them. You don't want to kickstart digestion. If you are somehow lucky enough to nab a small animal, don't eat it. Instead, drink the blood. A lot of desert animals survive with no water and instead live on the blood from their prey. Sadly, my third night presented no opportunities for water, and to make matters worse, the blisters on my feet were now fully formed. Your feet are incredibly important in a survival situation for obvious reasons. You want to always keep them dry and should air them out every time you stop for a rest. Blisters can be dangerous because they can lead to infection, so just try to keep them dry and clean. I had no way of cleaning them though, so I just had to soldier on. I've been keeping track of my progress on a topographical map, which is really great for keeping your precise location as long as you know how to read those types of maps. However, in a desert with very few significant topographic features, it's a lot harder. I realized I was significantly off course by the time the sun was rising and my pickup was supposed to be meeting me at 8 in the morning. I'd ended up too far north by a few miles. I thought about double timing it to get to the pickup on time, but in a survival situation, you always have to be thinking tactically. If I got to the pickup and my ride wasn't there, I might have to survive out here another day or two on my own. I couldn't risk exerting myself and losing even more energy and water. I can't stress this enough. Always think ahead in these situations. I finally made it to my pickup just before noon, and the sun did not disappoint, roasting me from above. Even with only moderate winter temperatures, the desert provides no cover and the sun can be brutal. You might be inclined to take off clothing to cool off, but this is the opposite of what you should do. Instead, cover yourself with light colors in order to avoid making sweating worse and to keep from getting sunburn. There's a reason you always see Middle East desert tribes covering from head to toe and even 120-degree temperatures. My desert survival was a nice break from COVID quarantine, and I ended up losing 8 pounds over 3 days. So if you're looking for a quick weight loss technique, maybe try getting lost in the desert and hiking 60 miles in 3 days. Just joking, seriously, don't. I'm hopeful that COVID will ease up and we can get back to doing challenges, but I'm really looking forward to the spring and my Bigfoot hunt. Hopefully you guys are too. Coronavirus has really put a crimp in our plans to torture your favorite lab rat by making him do crazy, terrifying, uncomfortable, or disgusting things. All in the name of science, of course. But that's when we all got to thinking, if he can't go outside because of the virus, what if we put him in a place where there's no chance of catching the virus? Mostly because everyone there is already dead. And that's exactly what we did, as we challenged our least important staff writer to spend 24 hours locked in a real morgue. What we didn't count on was him accidentally stumbling on photographic proof of the supernatural. 0700 hours. This is the start of my official challenge, 24 hours locked in a morgue. Honestly, who's coming up with these ideas? Spend a day locked in with dead people. The infographic show is really run by a bunch of sadists. So I'm in a small auxiliary morgue in one of the communities outside of Los Angeles. How long it took infographics to find this place and get permission to do this is beyond me, but trust me, those guys and gals have been pretty motivated lately to get me back on the road and doing challenges. I guess everyone's had about enough of coronavirus. Speaking of the virus, sadly people still aren't taking it seriously and the death toll continues to mount. The place I'm at was an old morgue that went unused for a few decades until the more modern facilities became overwhelmed with coronavirus casualties. So this place is what you might call temporary storage, while the morticians get about disinfecting the body and prepping it for a funeral. And this place is too near capacity. It's the weekend though, and this is a pretty small community, so I was told I shouldn't be disturbed. Then the mortician's assistant said, "At least not by the living anyway," and sort of laughed in a way that hinted he was only half joking. I didn't find it funny at all. I tried to get the girlfriend to do this challenge with me, but she flat out refused to go anywhere near a dead body. Hard to blame her. I've seen death before, but sitting in a tiny building stuffed full of corpses is nobody's idea of a good time. Plus, the weather outside is really overcast, which kind of adds to the gloom of the place. There's a main office, a small waiting area of sorts, 2 private offices which are locked, and the storage examination room, which takes up most of the building. The room is extremely chilly, and the temperature is kept really low in order to help keep the bodies from rotting more than normal. The room is even colder than normal now because these bodies are having to be stored for longer than usual thanks to the overflow of COVID victims. I heard some cities are even using refrigerated trucks after running out of morgue space. So, okay, I have to stay in this building for 24 hours. Since the building is being used as overflow, nobody should be coming by to bother me, I was told. At least until I get let out tomorrow morning. The doors are locked, and the only way out now for me would be breaking a window, which you best believe I'm ready to do if a zombie situation starts kicking off. I've got some snacks, food to last me my stay, my laptop, and a sleeping bag. There's also a small TV the staff brought out from one of the offices for me. All in all, how hard could this be? 1,200 hours. Alright, it's been 5 hours stuck in this building and the weather outside turned from bad to worse. It was overcast at first and then just started raining, which is just perfect. Seriously, it rains so rarely out here in SoCal, and it just so happens to start raining on the day I spend in a creepy morgue. I swear, sometimes I think the universe, and not just infographic show, is out to get me. I went into the storage examination room just out of sheer curiosity and immediately changed my mind. It's freezing in there right now, and the smell of chemicals and death is overwhelming. It's hard to describe the smell of a corpse. Kinda like old leather with some sickly sweet aroma, but a pungent aftertaste. My curiosity was immediately satisfied, and I ducked back into the main office. 19 hours to go. 1,334 hours. Alright, I swear I'm hearing a slight clicking noise coming from somewhere in the building. I can only hear it sporadically, and I'm sure it's something totally normal, but given my circumstances, it's definitely making me a bit spooked. 1,500 hours. First 8 hours down, and I'm really looking forward to this ending. I can't explain how unsettling it is to be stuck in a building full of dead bodies literally just a few feet away from you. I tried eating lunch, but I just didn't have the appetite for it. The rain is coming sporadically, but the clouds are still heavy outside. I was really hoping for some sunshine, but this whole day has a very horror movie vibe to it that I'm not digging. Also, I kept hearing that clicking sound. It's rapid fire and it comes in short bursts. Sounds maybe like high heels on ceramic or something like that, but there's no ceramic floors here. The office area is carpeted and the actual exam room is cement. So I tried clicking on the floor with a pen, but it totally makes a different sound. I'm sure it's a rodent or something. There's bound to be mice or rats in a building that stores human bodies, right? At least I hope so. 1,704 hours. Clicking noise again, this time much more obvious. It used to be that I'd only really hear it when the audio on the TV died down, but now I can sometimes hear it even over the TV. I did a sweep of the building, which included going into that creepy exam room, but found nothing. 1,900 hours. It's been 12 hours now. I've managed to eat some, but it's incredible how little appetite you have when you're a few feet away from a bunch of corpses. I've heard that corpses can burp or moan or even move as gases escape the body, but these bodies have been here for too long for any of that. Something I am incredibly grateful for. Listen, put me face to face with something alive any day, but don't mess around with the dead. Me and Infographic Show are still negotiating me doing a ghost hunting challenge episode for you guys. I'm super not keen on anything dead, it just really squeaks me out. I haven't gone in to look at any of the dead bodies. I know all of you are probably wondering when I'd get around to that. You think it's the first thing you'd do if you were in my shoes, right? Well, I did too, until I was actually physically there. Now, the last thing I want is to see what's inside those storage cabinets or whatever they call them. I just kind of want to pretend those corpses don't even exist. But, well, I think my brain has a kind of defect, because it has a weird macabre sort of curiosity, and once I get that itch, I just can't stop thinking about it until I scratch it. I've been explicitly told not to do this by the staff, but the staff aren't here, and there's no cameras, so I braved the freezing cold and found an empty cabinet. Listen, I knew it was a bad idea. I mean, how horror movie cliche could things get? But like I said, when I got that curious itch, I gotta satisfy it. Once I got in trouble in a Titanic exhibit in Las Vegas for climbing past the guardrails and touching a part of the hull that had been brought up from the depths. I just wanted to feel that connection to history. I mean, how many people have physically touched the Titanic? Other than me and a bunch of really dead people. I checked to make sure the door wouldn't close on me, and even wedged a few pens into the open door to make sure it couldn't close, and then after a pretty long, pretty hard think, I climbed onto the slab and wheeled myself inside. I wish I could tell you it was an amazing experience. It wasn't. Matter of fact, it was immediately creepy and I very quickly got back out again. I'm not claustrophobic, but knowing that one day I'd be in this same box, only dead, very quickly made me want to leave. Honestly, would not recommend trying this one at home, kids. 2,100 hours. I haven't heard that clicking in a while, so I was probably right. It was probably just a mouse or a rat, maybe even raccoons. It's been raining throughout the day, so I wouldn't be surprised if small animals were trying to find shelter in this old building. It's well past dark outside, and it's sort of starting to dawn on me I have to go to sleep here soon. Sure, being up and watching TV during the daytime in a morgue is one thing, but when it gets dark and you realize you're gonna have to spend the night there, well, that's another thing entirely. I tried to eat, but once more the presence of all these bodies makes it impossible to have an appetite, and the food tastes like ash. Also, I can't get the smell of chemicals and death out of my nostrils after climbing into that cabinet. I mean, in hindsight, I doubt they cleaned them very well after being used, if at all. That was definitely monumentally stupid. 2,141 hours. The clicking's back. This time I swear it was coming from one direction and then from another, and definitely from the examination room area. You know, the place with the corpses? While this makes my mouse and rat hypothesis more likely, I guess it makes a reanimated corpse hypothesis just as likely. Comforting thought. 2,300 hours. I've been trying to stay up on purpose because I really don't want to sleep in here, but I can feel myself getting sleepier and sleepier. I can't stress how little I am enjoying this challenge. Put me in the wild, out on the streets, facing down another bear, literally anything but being around dead people. And the clicking, it just keeps happening. Sometimes faintly, other times much more pronounced. It happens every 15 or 20 minutes or so. And if I walk into the exam room while it's happening, it stops. I kept the lights on in there and in the office area I'm at, but this is 1970s lighting, and honestly, I feel like it just makes things creepier. I'm gonna try to sleep for a bit, and I've set up my sleeping bag in a far corner of the room where I can see the rest of the building pretty well. Hopefully this is not my final entry from the land of the living. 0228 hours. I am not going back to sleep, and I am seriously considering breaking a window to get out. I slept for a while, but I got woken up about a half an hour ago suddenly. I'm not sure why. I vaguely remember having a dream of being inside this building and somebody I couldn't quite see was trying to get my attention. Can't explain it, weird dream stuff, but this person was distorted and looked like a blur, and when they spoke it was all muffled. Then they grabbed me and shook me and I woke up. Very creepy stuff. Just a few seconds after waking up I heard the clicking noise again. It was much louder without the TV on, and here's the thing, I had kept the TV on purpose so the noise of real living people would make me feel better as I slept. I even checked to make sure it had no auto turn off function enabled, and yet, when I woke up, the TV was off. Also, my laptop was turned so that when I opened it back up, the screen was facing away from me. I very clearly remember just shutting the laptop closed, while obviously facing me because I had just been writing to you guys on it. But when I woke up and opened it, it was facing away. This is all really starting to be too much. I really don't do well with ghost crap. I'm still terrified of the poltergeist movies. 0510 hours. I haven't been able to sleep, or maybe I just don't want to. I've stayed up watching TV and turned all the lights in the building back on. I'm officially on high alert. It's all thanks to that damn clicking sound. I got a hunch about a half an hour ago when I heard it again and I went into the exam room, started tapping on things with my fingernail. Tried the floor. Nope, not the right pitch. I tried an examination table. Again, not quite right. I tried one of those medical storage chests. Nope, not it. Then I tried one of the cabinets the bodies are kept in, and it sounded almost right. I opened it a little bit, catching a glimpse of very purple toes in the process, and tapped on the metal lid from the inside. Perfect match. Listen, this thing still might be a mouse or a rat or maybe a big roach, but I am officially done with this challenge. The only thing keeping me from prying open a window and trying to crawl out is the fact that I know in less than 2 hours I'll be let out, and I really don't want to cause trouble for the show. But I am beyond done with this challenge. This is my final entry, and I'm spending most of my time here with my back to the wall and TV lined up so I can keep an eye on the exam room doors and all those corpses on the other side. Post-challenge update. So a few days after this very stupid challenge, I was talking to a friend about everything that went on in that morgue, and he was very curious about the laptop being turned around. He suggested I check the laptop's camera roll, because apparently spirits sometimes can activate digital cameras and make themselves known that way. The laptop I was using is pretty old because I never take my nice laptop out in the field with me on these challenges. I never used the camera on that thing, and the last time I did must have been a few years ago. But, well, I did find pictures. Just like my friend said I might, and they don't make me feel any better about my experience. So, okay, here's picture 1. Sorry about the bad quality. Like I said, it's an old laptop and low light didn't help matters. You can clearly see the glow of the TV, which must have still been on at that point. Now here's picture 2. TV is still on, but did you catch that? Here, look at picture 1 and picture 2 back to back. See how the perspective of the photo very clearly shifts? Something obviously moved the laptop in between photos. Now, for the reason I will never do a ghost hunt challenge video for the infographic show ever in my life. Picture number 3. You can see how the image is fuzzy, like the camera doesn't quite know what to focus on. Or maybe because those big boots appeared suddenly as the photo was being taken. You can even tell the laptop moved pretty dramatically right before the photo was taken. Listen. I can tell you that I wasn't wearing boots that night, and there was only me in that morgue for the entire stay. But I understand if you don't believe me. As for me, I'm officially done with anything related to dead people or ghosts for infographics. They do not pay me enough for this. Hello infographics fans, we're back again with another $1 billion challenge. In case you don't remember from our last video, the premise is simple. You've just been awarded $1 billion in the super stupendous mega jackpot. But there's just one catch. You have to spend every dollar in 24 hours, or else you have to give all the money back. This time though, if you fail, instead of giving the money to an organization dedicated to kicking kittens, all the money instead will be donated to an organization dedicated to blasting baby seals into space, where they'll drift all alone for eternity, with no one to dry their tiny little baby seal tears of loneliness. So you better not fail. Think you can outspend us? Stay tuned and let us know your list in the comments. 1. Sweet digs. As always, real estate is going to be your best investment. Plus, you have to spend $1 billion in 24 hours. And if you saw our last video, you're probably starting to get the idea that blowing through all that dough isn't as easy as it sounds. Luckily, we got our eyes set on some of the swankiest digs in the whole world. Mukesh Ambani's Antilia, located in Mumbai, has a 27-story skyscraper that's been built to withstand magnitude 8 earthquakes. Antilia is one of the safest and most luxurious homes money can buy. And at the cost of $1 billion, that takes care of our entire budget all in one go. So that's it for this episode of the Infographics Show. We hope you enjoyed our list, and if you think you can do better, let us know in the comments. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more great content. And if you enjoyed this video, check out one of our other great vids. Okay, fine. Antilia may be cheating a bit, though we can't help but wonder who really needs a $1 billion home anyway. Plus, we're afraid of heights, so we're gonna pass on Antilia and instead set our eyes on something a bit more sea level-ish, and with a great deal more heritage. Built in 1929 and designed by an American architect, Villa Leopolda, located on the French Riviera, has an estimated value of a whopping $506 million. But for all that cash, you're getting quite a bit of history, as the famous estate was once owned by King Leopold II of Belgium, presumably where he would go to relax after mutilating and torturing thousands of Africans in his colonies. During World War I, it was also used as a military hospital, and if you've got to get checked into a hospital anywhere, Villa Leopolda is definitely the place to be, with a giant swimming pool, 11 bedrooms, 14 bathrooms, an extensive garden, a private beachfront, sports courts, and a bowling alley. Villa Leopolda is one sweet place to get laid up with a gunshot wound or two. The luxurious home would go on to be bought by a Russian billionaire who bid $750 million on the property, though current estimates place its real value at its current $506 million. That's $506 million down, $494 million to go. 2. Art is the essence of life. The most beautiful home in the world can feel a pretty soulless place without art to liven it up. After all, what is life without art? Everything you do and enjoy nowadays is art, from the TV shows and movies you watch to the video games you play and the comic books you read. Art is all around us, but we're not going to fill our luxurious digs on the French Riviera with art for normals. Let the peasants enjoy their superhero movies and comic books. We have $1 billion. We have class now. We have a painting of a boy holding a pipe. At $104 million, Picasso's Boy with a Pipe shattered records for an auctioned painting. Described as the finest work in public hands that was for sale, we have to agree. I mean, just take one look at it. It's a boy. He's holding a pipe. $106 million is far too little, we say. An absolute insult to art as a whole. $1 billion wouldn't have been enough. Did we mention he's holding a pipe? With our upper crust status firmly secured, we've also knocked out another $106 million for a total expenditure of $612 million. That leaves us with $388 million left to go, and we have a pretty good idea of how to spend that money. 3. Misa not in this movie anymore. Upon its release in 1977, Star Wars became an immediate cultural icon and one of the greatest film franchises in the world. And then in 1999, we got the eagerly anticipated prequels and the first new Star Wars films in decades. As fans packed into theaters around the nation, ticket sales records were set and broken over the course of a single weekend. And then we all got to meet Jar Jar Binks, the single worst character in all cinema past, present, and future. Unfortunately, we can't send a Terminator back in time to kill George Lucas before he wrote Jar Jar into the skips for all 3 prequels. We know, we checked. Remember, we have $1 billion at our disposal. We can, however, pay to completely reshoot the entirety of The Phantom Menace and terminate Jar Jar Binks from ever being part of the prequels. With a production cost of $115 million, undoing this horrible mistake is well within our budget. And though in our last episode we said you couldn't give this money to charity, this piece of charitable contribution to cinema is completely acceptable. Eliminating Jar Jar Binks from The Phantom Menace will knock out another $115 million from our budget, bringing our total expenditures to $727 million and leaving us with $273 million to go. 4. Dead fish. As we've mentioned, art is important, and it's a great way to throw away a ton of money that could be used, we don't know, for things like helping people. But while most art does in fact help people by giving them shows to watch or books to read that gives them a break from their daily lives, art that costs millions or tens of millions of dollars really helps people get a break? Well, we're going to invest once more in art, and we have our eyes set on the world-famous art piece Dead Shark. At $12 million, Dead Shark is, well, it's a dead tiger shark in a tank full of formaldehyde. We know what you're thinking. You're spending millions for a dead fish, what's the point? But you just don't get it, man. But you know what? We're gonna help you get it, because we aren't content with a dead shark a few feet long. We're gonna put our prodigious wealth to use to make something far, far greater. The average tiger shark weighs 1,100 pounds, so that means our $12 million dead shark art piece has approximate cost of $10,909 per pound. The elephant, largest land mammal in the world, can weigh up to 8,800 pounds. We think you see where we're going with this. With a cost to create a new art piece at $10,909 per pound of animal stuffed into a glass case and filled with formaldehyde, we're going to commission a brand new art piece that we'll cleverly call Dead Elephant for a price tag of $95,999,200, plus of course a 10% commission to the artist for a total amount of $106 million. Some anonymous bidder may have a full-size tiger shark in their home right now, but we've got a full-grown African bull elephant, perfectly preserved in formaldehyde for visitors to gawk at for years to come. Now that's money well spent. That brings our total expenses to $833 million, with $167 million left to go. 5. In space, no one can hear you harass. Harvey Weinstein had a really bad year in 2018, as he faced several court appearances over the plethora of sexual assault and sexual harassment allegations against him. Sadly, Weinstein's behavior is not only habitual but endemic to the entertainment industry, with most women both in front or behind the camera having experienced sexual harassment or outright assault, having one of the highest rates of any industry. We can't do much about the behavior of all the other predators in Hollywood, but we can use the rest of the money we have to make sure Weinstein never asks another young intern to watch him shower naked again. Currently, NASA spends about $10,000 a pound to get cargo to the International Space Station. With Harvey Weinstein's approximate weight being 300 pounds, that means that we can use the rest of our $167 million to put Harvey Weinstein at a medium orbit around the Earth of about 14,139 miles. That'll be far enough away from the Earth that he'll be well within the bounds of any restraining order against him, and will ensure that Wino never bad touches again. Once more, charity is technically against the rules, but this is another public service we're going to get behind all the way. Over 1 billion people live on an average of just $1 a day, mostly in the poorest areas of South America, Africa, and Asia. But while these people manage to scrape by, is it possible to live on this meager amount right here in America? We decided to task your favorite lab rat with finding out. Week 1. $1 a day. When I was first given this challenge, I thought I was going to get sent to some remote village somewhere, like that one documentary film. Turns out infographics expected me to somehow live on a single dollar a day right here in the US. Initially, I was confident it was impossible. Well, I'm pretty stubborn, so I took the challenge anyway. 30 days, $30. At least infographics will be happy with the expense budget for this one. Now, I have advantages that people really living on $1 a day can't have. For instance, I don't have to pay rent or utilities on my budget because that'd be impossible, and I don't fancy living on the streets again for the show. At least not for 30 days without a massive pay raise. Basically, the expenses I had to worry about were food and anything else that popped up. As I sat to discuss it with a girlfriend, it was clear we were going to have to improvise some of our favorite activities. Food was the biggest issue. A $7 budget for an entire week is ridiculously unrealistic, but there's ways to make it work. First, I immediately forgot about eating 3 square meals a day. I'd eat 1 meal at most, and I made sure that that meal is free. In my normal life, I volunteer every week at a food kitchen for the homeless and struggling, and I know that plenty of these kitchens will let volunteers eat there for free in exchange for their time. It's not going to be your daily 2,000 recommended calories, but at least I got half of that. The only problem was that the food kitchen was only open 5 days a week, which left me with Saturday and Sunday. It was time to buy cheap food, and you're probably already thinking about hitting up a local dollar store. Problem is that these stores will force you to buy a minimum amount of their cheap food, like 12 cans for $12, which was way out of my budget. So instead I went to a regular store and I bought eggs and a loaf of French bread. For $2 I got a case of 18 eggs at Albertsons, and another $2 got me a loaf of freshly made French bread. Eggs are packed with calories and nutrients, the perfect thing to get into your body for cheap. Bread itself is quite filling, which can curb your hunger pangs. Next, I rode my bike to every fast food joint I could get to and hit up their condiment section. I was after one thing: mayonnaise. And when I finally found a place with mayo, I grabbed a handful of packets and shoved them in my pocket. Mayo is very high in calories and again good for filling you up and giving you energy. I was already seeing my eating practices as one of my survival challenges, only this time instead of budgeting energy, I was budgeting money and trying to get the most calories for my cash. Once I got home, I hard-boiled some eggs and made an egg sandwich. Simple, decently delicious, and cheap. Still went to bed with a rumbling tummy, especially since the girlfriend had a full-on dinner since she's not part of the challenge. But hey, I've gone hungry before out in the bush. Me and the girlfriend are pretty sick of spending time in the house, so this challenge gave us an opportunity to get some free entertainment in. We busted out our rollerblades and tore up the beach boardwalk, our dog running after us on the leash. That was a little too energy intensive for me though, since I was basically getting half the calories I normally get, so we had to take it easy after that. Turns out finding free things to do that are actually fun is kinda hard, because I was budgeting gas money into any driving we did for entertainment, so we ended up driving nowhere. First week down and I'd spent roughly $5 with $25 to go. Week 2. I can tell I'm already feeling the effects of mild starvation. I say mild because I am still getting roughly half the 2,000 calories you need each day. I feel a bit lethargic all the time, and I don't know if it's the lack of food or the stress over budgeting, but there's definitely dark circles growing under my eyes. Normally, the girlfriend and I exercise together, but there's no way I can keep up with her anymore. My food kitchen idea is getting me 5 meals a week, and sometimes I even get a few snacks or leftover fruit at the end of each 2.5-hour shift. However, one of the nights they were full up on volunteers when I got there, so I had to provide for myself. I bought more eggs and more bread, and this week I had to go through a bit extra bread, so I spent about $7, bringing my total to $12 in expenses. For entertainment, I spent absolutely nothing. Instead, we played board games on Friday night, and Saturday night we walked down to the beach and just laid there together watching the waves as our pup ran around the sand. I'm enjoying the closeness this challenge is bringing between me and my girlfriend, but I'm hungry literally all the time. Also, it's clear to me that I could never do this challenge if starting from scratch without things like a place to live. At least not without some serious restructuring of my life. Week 3. This week I ran out of toothpaste, and I realized with a growing dread in my stomach that I'd have to pay for more if I wanted to keep practicing good dental hygiene. I tried to make it last as long as possible, even cut open the tube and dipped my brush into the remaining paste clinging to the walls of the tube. Eventually I had to pony up $4 for a tube of toothpaste, also another $2 for a single roll of toilet paper. Yes, I am counting individual sheets at this point. I could handle 30 days of hard-boiled eggs and bread if I needed to, but I decided to vary things up a bit and got a 5-pound bag of rice for $4, along with a 5-pound bag of beans for $6.49. That last one hurt the budget, but I could make beans and rice last a long time. I hit $29 out of my $30 budget, but luckily there were enough beans and rice to last me through this and next week, which is a good thing, because I only got 3 nights at the food kitchen this week. Since I can't drive there because I can't afford gas, I have to bike and others beat me there, even when I was leaving early. 2 nights this week they were already full on volunteers, so beans and rice it was. By now I have definitely noticed a marked change in my weight. I've lost a whopping 7 pounds in the last 3 weeks and my energy is very, very low. I swear even my face is starting to look gaunt, and the bags under my eyes are only getting worse. The girlfriend is legitimately concerned, but I only have 1 week left. Week 4. It was a good thing I bought those 5-pound bags of beans and rice, because this week the volunteering situation was even worse and I only got 2 nights there. If I could drive, I could have just gone to a different kitchen and tried my luck there, but there's no money for gas. I believe that officially I've hit what's known as a starvation diet. I've definitely not gotten enough calories to maintain a normal weight, and since this thing began I've lost 10 pounds. My energy levels are abysmal, and even my mood suffered. Plus there's the stress of making sure that things last so I don't have to replace them. I even took to rinsing out paper towels and letting them dry so I could reuse them. I joked about doing the same with toilet paper, but let's just say the girlfriend wasn't having it. This challenge has really made me think about the plight of people in developing nations, who really do have to live on $1 or less a day. Now, the difference between us is that, on the whole, their entire lifestyle is cheaper than ours, and prices reflect that. My 5-pound bag of beans would have never cost almost $7 in a remote village in Africa, but here in America, everything just costs more. Which really begs the question, why? Why is it that medicine is a fraction of the cost in Mexico that it is here? Why is a pair of blue jeans as much as $100 here in the US and $20 somewhere else? Because we'll pay those prices, since we have better paying jobs than people elsewhere. Even if, ironically, the value of the money we earn ends up greatly diminishing because greedy corporations are jacking up prices knowing we'll pay them. Then, in the long run, we end up with a society where most 20 and 30-year-olds can't afford to rent a one-bedroom apartment in the majority of the country. What I'm saying is the system is hella broken. But neither you nor I need this challenge to know that. I spent my last dollar this week on a Crunch bar, because it's the girlfriend's favorite. She teared up when she saw I spent my last dollar on something for her and then hugged me tight before splitting the candy bar with me. Way I figure she suffers alongside with me these challenges, and we both just lost a month of our lives even if she wasn't the one living on $1 a day. As far as real people living on $1 a day, I'm grateful to be in the position I'm in, but I hope one day I can work to build a world where nobody makes the sacrifices they do, because even the tiny little taste that I got was intolerable. Some exotic vacation locales offer tourists an incredible opportunity, the chance to feed baby sharks by hand in small natural lagoons. The sharks involved are typically very young white-tip reef sharks, black-tip reef sharks, nurse sharks, and the famous hammerheads. The baby sharks are lured in with small pieces of fish, and then the tourists are welcome to toss the juvenile predators other pieces of bait fish from the safety of a dock or a small boat. Sometimes, though, a particularly adventurous or foolhardy tourist will jump in the water and literally try to feed the sharks by hand. This can result in injury to the fingers or even bites at the feet and legs. While a single baby shark doesn't pose a particularly dangerous threat, what if you were swarmed by 100 of them? Hello and welcome to another episode of the Infographic Show. Today we're taking a look at what would happen if you were attacked by 100 baby sharks. Shark love is a very violent affair. When a male shark is interested in mating, he finds a female and swims alongside her, signaling his desire by biting at her pectoral fins. While these bites aren't hard enough to cause serious damage, they can still draw blood, given the vast quantity of very sharp teeth each shark sports. Once the female submits to mating, the male will bite down on her gills, head, or fins in order to keep her steady in the water. If you thought your first time was difficult, imagine trying to make the beast with two backs while having no hands to hold on to anything with. Because of the violence involved in mating, females are typically up to 50% larger than males and have skin that's up to 3 times as thick. Still, a female can leave a mating session very battered and bloody from the male's love bites. So it's a good thing sharks have some serious healing superpowers that can turn those open wounds to fading scars in just weeks. Once fertilized, shark eggs can take anywhere from a few months to a year to develop, though scientists suspect that the rare frilled shark could take an astonishing 3.5 years to develop its eggs. If you thought dealing with a pregnant wife or girlfriend for 9 months was rough, imagine almost 4 years of mood swings, nausea, and strange food cravings. Once developed, though, sharks can bear their young in 3 ways: by laying eggs, live birth, or a hybrid of the two. Only about 30% of sharks lay eggs, such as horn and cat sharks. Most sharks, though, give birth to live young, much the same way we humans do. These include blue, bull, and hammerhead sharks. Other sharks, though, hatch from eggs inside the mother's body in a hybrid of the two techniques, and the baby sharks eat a store of unfertilized eggs in the womb until ready for birth. These sharks include great white, tiger, and whale sharks. Sand tiger sharks, though, are a breed apart, and these fearsome predators actually cannibalize each other while inside the womb, typically leaving only 1 or 2 survivors, which finally reach birth. Sand tiger sharks give survival of the fittest a completely new meaning. Once born, though, every shark of any species is on its own. Unlike most animals, shark mothers give absolutely no care to their young, and they really don't need to. Tens of millions of years of evolution have honed the shark into a perfect predator, and baby sharks are born with all of their larger brethren's hunting ferocity and prowess. While their eyesight is indeed poor, sharks have an incredible sense of smell, and many have a powerful electroreceptive sense that enables them to sense the electric energy given off by a prey animal's muscles. This leaves prey with few places to hide, and young sharks often feed on small fish, squid, and octopus. The lack of parental support means that everything about a baby shark needs to be ready and fully developed for a lifetime of killing the moment it leaves the womb. Sharks, though, take a very long time to mature, with the dreaded great white shark not reaching full sexual maturity until it's 26 years old. And the Greenland shark, which is thought to be Earth's longest living vertebrate, won't fully mature until an incredible 150 years of age. This means that a Greenland shark reaching sexual maturity this year was born in 1868, the year that the Japanese shogunate, or hereditary military dictator, was officially abolished. Imagine being stuck living with your parents for a century and a half, or waiting over 100 years just to have sex. That's nothing though for a shark that can live for an estimated 400 years, which, if you're keeping count, that means that a shark dying today would have been born the same year that astronomer Johannes Kepler established the last of his 3 planetary laws. So just how dangerous really are baby sharks, and what would happen if you were attacked by 100 of them? Teeth are the first points to consider, pun fully intended. While, for instance, a great white shark's teeth are serrated and triangular, designed to slice through flesh, baby shark teeth are often conical, designed to puncture deep into flesh and hold prey in place. Keeping with the great white, its baby teeth can be up to a quarter inch in length, which may not seem like much until you realize that you'd be getting hit by a mouthful of up to 50 teeth. The problem with being swarmed by 100 tiny hungry mouths is not necessarily going to be massive damage to your body, but rather the repeated punctures of 50 tiny teeth over and over again. Some places, such as your skull, ribs, outer thighs, and buttocks, will be able to tolerate the assault just fine. These areas have tough bone or fatty deposits without major veins or arteries that the baby shark teeth can reach. Other places though, such as the inner wrist, ankle, side of the neck, and inner thigh, feature arteries that run very close to the surface of the skin, and these will be well within biting distance of 100 tiny mouths. The femoral artery along the inside of the thigh would be of serious concern, as it's one of the largest arteries in the body, and a puncture there would lead you to very quickly bleeding out. For men, there's the added concern of your dangly bits. Soft and fleshy as they are, they would be a prime target for the small sharks to munch on, and well, we don't want to consider the type of damage that could happen down there. Baby sharks don't pose much of a realistic threat to the average human, and it's not until they grow into their adult sizes that we have much to fear from them. Yet a swarm of 100 hungry baby sharks would make short work of you. Not so much by eating you, as they would be physically incapable of tearing chunks of flesh from your body, but just from the massive blood loss that their very sharp teeth would inflict. So if you're ever on an exotic vacation and offered a chance to feed baby sharks, we suggest you stay on the boat. Oh, and to our male viewers, we bet you'll never think of that baby shark song the same way again, will you? It's a dark, dreary world full of monsters and dangers, all waiting to end the short life of an equally short child protagonist. With such a hazardous adventure ahead of you, and with us running out of ideas to get our in-house challenge guy to do with quarantine still in effect, we turned to your favorite lab rat and told him to make us better at playing one of our newest favorite games, Little Nightmares 2. Warning, spoilers ahead. Hey info fans, time for another challenge, sort of. Today I'm challenged with making you, or at least everyone at the infographics office that sucks at puzzle platformer games, better at not dying in Little Nightmares 2. I'm a recent fan. I've never played the original and it totally flew under the radar for me, but I'm completely impressed with this game, and if you don't own it, you should. But alright, let's get into the survival and stick around at the end for a compilation clip of a bunch of my deaths and fails. Survival tip number 1. Cardio is life. If you're one of the people who've never played a platform game before, then surprise, because you're in for a lot of jumping, pulling, dragging, and especially running. You better get good at all these activities, because there's plenty of sections in the game where making critical jumps or not sucking at running means the difference between life and death. Take for instance my own introduction to jumping, and watch me fail to realize you had to hold the R1 button to hold onto a ledge so you can pull yourself up. Listen, puzzle platformers are not my genre of game, okay? But you better get good at tricky jumps too, with the added difficulty of trying to tell depth in a non-3D world. My advice? Try to get reference points from the environment. There's some rooms with tile floors that you can use as a sort of grid to make things a lot easier. Other times you just have to fail a lot, like me. You also have to push and pull objects, though some of them aren't that clear. If you're stuck in a section and you can't seem to progress, look for something to push or pull your way to victory. Check every single handle you can find and try to drag or push every box you come across with the R1 button. Or you can do like me and spend an entire minute trying to get stupid 6 to give you a boost only to realize you were supposed to pull out the drawer to a chest and hop on top of it. You better get your coordination down with running and jumping, as well as trying to get some sense of depth in a mostly 2D world, because your life literally depends on it. Also, it helps if you don't smack straight into a wall when you're aiming for the door. Survival tip number 2. It's a trap! For some reason, this entire world is hell-bent on capturing children. And while the lore never really explains this and lets us extrapolate our own conclusion, one thing's for certain: if something seems suspicious, it definitely is. That's no moon. It's a bear trap waiting to deliver a horribly agonizing death. Most traps are fairly obvious. If there's a thick patch of leaves, then there's probably a good reason why you shouldn't step on it. Now, you can typically spot an obvious trap because the game will give you lots of subtle hints about how to bypass it. Like for instance, providing an absolutely ludicrous amount of pine cones when you haven't seen a single one yet. Gee, I wonder what they could be used for. Or by giving you an obvious walkway that keeps you off the floor. Anyone who's ever played the game The Floor is Hot Lava should see that the traps are coming a mile away. Of course, you could just be like me and have a morbid curiosity about what would happen if you walked into one of those traps. Also, make sure you watch out for baited traps. Video games have hardwired us to look for things obviously out of the ordinary that we can grab, because those things are typically useful later on. Fall prey to this instinct in Little Nightmares though, and you could find yourself on a one-way ride to the Grim Reaper, or get stupid lucky like me. Or not so lucky other times because clearly I didn't learn my own lesson. Then again, there is a thing called dumb luck, for a very good reason. Never hurts to also look up occasionally though. Survival tip number 3. Stealing is good. As in most survival games, you want to be a kleptomaniac. If something looks like it can be taken, take it. And don't let your morality give you much trouble over it. Matter of fact, in one of Little Nightmares 2's biggest weak points, there's rarely if ever consequences for you taking things even when it looks downright scary. All I'm saying is that was a golden moment for a good scare and to add some tension. But as you'll see while playing the game, while there are very terrifying moments of adrenaline-pumping action and horror, these are highly scripted and almost always predictable. When I started playing, I was sneaking around everywhere and cursing whenever I accidentally knocked over a cup or kicked a shoe. However, it became quite clear that outside of specific instances, you're free to throw, kick, and steal anything you like. One of the detriments of this game, in my opinion. Survival tip number 4. Sometimes you really do have to be sneaky. Pretty sure this one's obvious to anyone who's ever played a Metal Gear Solid game, but while for most of the game you're free to run around and make as much noise as you want, you better sneak when the game tells you to. The general rule is that if you can hear or see a monster around, it's time to hit that crouch button and slow walk your way to the destination. Oh, and stay out of the light. Duh. Also, moving slowly isn't the same as moving sneakily. Along the same vein of being sneaky, sometimes you gotta find a good spot to hide. The game will make it obvious when you're supposed to hide, if you actually pay attention to the background. Look for boxes lying on their side completely filled with shadow, or open cabinets that are dark inside. Trust me, finding a good hiding spot is absolutely necessary. I don't want to tell you how many times it took me to figure out that you're supposed to hide inside boxes. Seriously, just get in the damn boxes. Survival tip number 5. Teamwork makes the dream work. You start the game by rescuing Six, your compatriot in this adventure, through a hellish, twisted Pale City. Six is a good friend, and you make sure you rescue her every time she gets into trouble. In exchange, she's there to give you a friendly boost, a helping hand, and never ever betray you completely out of the blue. Sorry, still got some PTSD from a certain section of the game. Anyway, look for opportunities for Six to help you leap across wide chasms or give you a friendly boost up onto ledges that are just out of reach. Survival tip number 6. Learn to aim. Little Nightmares 2 is what's known as a 2.5D world, meaning it's not quite 3D, but it's not quite 2D either. There's an amount of depth to each scene, but the camera never really moves in a way to let you explore the area in 3 dimensions. This is a bit of a problem when it comes to aiming. My advice is to use things like the grid-like pattern of tiles on the floor to orient yourself, or try to pick out objects casting shadows that are on the same x-axis to try to figure out how deep you are in the scene. Given that the game includes many fast-paced action sequences where you need to be very accurate with attacks or aiming things, you better figure out fast how to aim. Or you can do like me and almost quit your writing job because you couldn't get past a single scene. By the way, I did this scene over 15 times before finally winning the fight, as you'll get to see here. Sometimes the game will give you cues that let you know you're aiming in the right direction, like when you have to throw things to activate buttons too high up for your tiny arms to reach. Look for mono looking up as you approach a button, and you know you're in the right spot to throw an item and activate a switch. Let's talk about the flashlight for a second. Flashlights are great survival items. They light up the dark and let you see where you're going, as well as showing you if any monsters are waiting to eat you up. However, its greatest use in Little Nightmares 2 is not to navigate. After all, this entire game is about you on a long journey to the right, but rather stop mannequin monsters in their tracks inside the hospital level. And if you're bad at aiming that flashlight, there's gonna be dire consequences. My advice is to use a mouse and a keyboard for the flashlight segment, and you probably know exactly which segment I'm talking about. Unless you're a whiz with a controller, aiming accurately with the flashlight to stop hordes of mannequin monsters in their tracks is gonna be a nightmare. The precision of a mouse, though, will make this one section of the game a breeze, further proof that PC is truly the master race. Survival tip number 7. It's always hammer time. There's lots of discarded trash lying around in the world of Little Nightmares, from loose shoes to balls of wadded up paper to glass cups you can have fun smashing with zero consequences. Seriously, real missed opportunity for causing enemies to be alarmed by all the sound you're making. However, there's 3 items that are definitely not trash, and definitely not an accident when you come across them. If you see a pipe, an axe, or a hammer, you pick that bad boy up and get ready for clobbering time. Because odds are you're going to face something that really needs a hammer to the face, whether a small clay child or a stubborn obstacle. Special note about fighting hand monsters, because you'll eventually end up fighting 2 of them at the same time, and they can be some of the most annoying encounters in the whole game. I don't want to talk about how hard I failed at this encounter, but eventually I discovered a strategy that made the fights against hand monsters a breeze. As hand monsters prepare to leap on you, they'll pause and flex their fingers, then leap in the direction the hand is facing. Now the hand monster will stop tracking your movement as soon as it prepares to leap, so simply move up, down, left, or right from the hand monster as it prepares to attack, and it'll miss you completely, leaving itself vulnerable for a good smashing. And we mean killing it, not what our British friends across the pond might mean by that expression. Odds are they've got their own hand monsters, and only hand monsters for that. You can consider that sick burn the last shot of the Revolutionary War. Last survival tip: walk away. Seriously, just walk away from the game when you've died one too many times to the same mechanic you can't quite nail down. The autosave feature in Little Nightmares is fantastic, and sometimes you gotta cool off before going at it again. That's it, our survival guide for Little Nightmares 2. Follow those basic tips and you'll be beating what's definitely one of the better games to come out in recent years, and my favorite sorta survival horror experience since Silent Hill. Now enjoy a compilation of a bunch of my deaths, and trust me, this is only when I happen to be recording and but a fraction of my total deaths. It's been back-to-school season in the US for a few months, and that means only one thing for most elementary kids and their parents. It's lice season. The much-dreaded tiny animal is notorious for infecting the heads of children, who often don't practice the same hygiene practices that adults do and thus leave themselves vulnerable to infection. All it takes is one child, and soon an entire classroom can be host to these tiny little creepy crawlies. But what happens if you actually do get lice? And what's the best treatment for them? Once more, we're turning to our favorite lab rat as we challenge him to deal with a lice infestation. Day 1. What the actual bleep is literally what I said on the phone with the infographic show after they sent me an email telling me my next challenge. It's back to school season, they said. People want to know about lice, they said. You could help people find out how to treat them, they said. And after a renegotiation of my fee, I finally relented and accepted. The next day, today, I got a package via private courier, and after signing for it, I brought it inside and just stared at it, knowing what was inside. Finally, I opened the box up and revealed several plastic tubes, and inside were what looked like small white dots, except they were moving. I was holding a box full of lice, and pretty soon they were going in my hair, just so I could find out what the best way to destroy them was. Well, I could just chuck them in a fire right now and that sort it out, wouldn't it? But no, that's not what I'm getting paid to do. And believe me, I'm getting paid very well for what I'm about to do. So first, I'm home alone, which is the only way I could do this challenge. The girlfriend is in Canada filming something, or else I know there'd be no way she'd let me do this. She's a clean freak, and infesting myself on purpose with lice ranks up there with, honestly, I don't know. There's nothing I could compare it to, but I'm pretty sure she would make me move out and only allow me back in when she's run me through full military nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare decontamination techniques. I told her over the phone and she just gave off a really deep sigh. I think a year ago she would have put up a fight, but by now she just sort of accepts the insanity I go through sometimes for my job. She made me swear I would boil all of our sheets and basically clean the entire house when it was over and before she got home, so thanks, infographics. Okay, so that's the little effect these buggers are already having on my social life. What can I expect them to do to me physically? Well, lice come in 3 varieties: head lice, body lice, and the infamous pubic lice or crabs. Pubic lice are kind of a misnomer though, because any lice you get in your crotch are automatically pubic lice. Basically, all lice live amongst your hairs and then move down to your skin so they can bite you and feed on your blood, like tiny disgusting little vampires. The resulting bites can be itchy, and though lice are not generally thought to be disease vectors, their bites can be so itchy that you inadvertently tear the skin open and cause infection. Not gonna lie, I am relieved to hear that there's little risk of these things carrying disease. Plus, infographics promised me that they were, quote, laboratory level sterile, end quote. Whatever in the world that means. You know what? I don't want to know. I literally have no desire to know from where in the world infographics got their hands on what are apparently medical quality lice. I did do some research online, and apparently you can even get lice in the mail, but I very quickly ended my search. So I'm going to be testing a variety of different treatments for getting rid of lice, and I'll be purposefully pouring them into my hair. I've never had pubic lice and never intend to, so that's off limits. I'll start with some homeopathic remedies and then move on to the real stuff, actual medicine. Spoiler alert, homeopathy is not a thing, so I'm confident none of those remedies will actually work, hence why I saved the real medicine for last. The treatments I'll try are tea tree oil, lavender oil, vodka, yes, you heard that right, and finally actual medicine in the form of shampoo designed to kill lice and their eggs. Looking at this list, I'm actually kind of thinking the vodka may have a pretty good chance of killing off the lice along with the shampoo, and I'm talking about real vodka here, not the wimpy stuff you buy at the grocery store. I once was assigned to teach firearms handling to Ukrainian forces, and they introduced me to Ukrainian vodka so strong it'll strip rust off of steel bolts, and you can totally buy it online. My first try nearly burned a hole through my gut, so I'm pretty confident this is going to destroy the lice. Treatment 1. Tea tree oil. Okay, so lice went in the hair a few days ago, and per the instructions I was given, I gave them a day to settle in. You know, unpack their bags, get used to their new home, which is my freaking head, but also because apparently these guys do not live very long without human or animal hosts, because they starve to death, which explains why I was sent so many lice at once. Apparently at least half of them were probably dead already. Their one free day was so they could feed and recuperate, and if you don't think I was freaking out over purposefully playing host to a bunch of bugs in my hair, then you're thinking wrong. We love tea tree oil, don't we? I mean, you saw it touted online as the solution to literally anything. Apparently Aboriginals in Australia used it for its medicinal properties for thousands of years, and it does have some medicinal qualities to it. And it's all natural, which means overprivileged first worlders geek out and pay a 3,000% markup for it. I get it, it just feels good to use something all natural, just like Mother Nature intended. Don't take harsh chemicals or drugs, just fall into the loving arms of Mother Gaia and let her love heal the hurt away with all the natural vibes. Except it didn't work at all, and I applied it extremely generously to my head and let it sit for half an hour, then rinsed it out. Got out a knit comb I picked up at the store and started going through my hair. There were a number of clearly dead lice, but it seems like most were happily moving around, going about their lives, probably thanking me for the all-organic bath they just had while going to their local Lice Starbucks for a nice lice frappuccino made from fair trade beans. So I repeated the treatment again a day later, once more doused my head with tea tree oil, let it sit, rinsed it out, ran a comb through my hair, same result. Not as many dead lice as the first time, still plenty of living lice. I did it one more more time, exact same result. So tea tree oil clearly has some anti-lice properties, but as the problem with every homeopathic treatment, those properties are in too low concentrations to really have a definitive effect. That's why drugs and chemical treatments are so much more effective. They concentrate the effective ingredients to a level that homeopathy doesn't even approach. If you're a fan of TED Talks, there's one given by James Randi where he eats an entire bottle of homeopathic medicine at once, which he can, of course, totally do because the only active ingredients in the entire bottle are in such low quantities that they have practically no effect on the body. Try that with real medicine though and, well, you'll probably really hurt yourself. Treatment 2. Lavender oil. So I gave my little buddies a few days to recuperate from the tea tree oil and my head's been an itchy mess. I've purposely been not leaving the house because, well, I have a head full of lice, so other than dealing with itchiness, it's been kind of lonely and boring. Also, I miss my girlfriend, but I'm glad she's not here to deal with this. Alright, lavender oil. How does it work? Well, if possible, lavender oil worked even less than tea tree oil, which I would label about 50% effective. I'm giving lavender oil about 30% effective, and I'm pretty sure that none of the dead lice I found were actually killed by anything in the oil itself, probably just drowned to death. If you go to clearlice.com and look up lavender oil, it'll tell you about how evil over-the-counter medicines and shampoos are dangerous for you. They use hot-button words like chemicals and pesticides and neurological and developmental problems. What they don't do is give you any perspective. Yes, the chemicals involved in over-the-counter treatments could in fact be harmful, but only if you were to consume them in astronomically high doses. One of those chemicals, permethrin, is found in many lice shampoo treatments, but if you search for its toxicity, you'll find the dose at which it becomes lethal for 50% of test rats exposed to it is 270 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. And even then, if only injected directly into the veins of the animal. When you extrapolate that to human toxicity, you'll basically have to inject an entire bottle of lice shampoo directly into your veins for it to have a 50% chance of killing you. Honestly, if you're getting adverse effects from lice shampoo, it's probably because you're supposed to be using it on your head, not injecting it into your freaking veins. Oh, also at clearlice.com they explicitly say that lavender oil does not kill lice, yet thousands of websites recommend it as an all-natural treatment. That's kind of hilarious. Treatment 3. Vodka. Hey, you know what's super not a good idea? Pouring 170 proof vodka imported from Eastern Europe directly onto your scalp. Do you guys remember the terrible Ghost Rider movie? Yeah, that's exactly what my head felt like after bending over in front of the tub and pouring very strong and very expensive vodka into my hair. I'm not gonna lie, I tried it once, only because I can take feeling like I'm being chemically scalped once in my life. I hear it's a popular remedy in Russia, but Russians also commonly throw babies into snowbanks before major surgeries to slow their heart rates. I'm not saying it's not effective, I'm just saying there's more non-Russian ways of doing things. As far as killing lice, honestly, I don't know. I couldn't even stand touching my head for a day after this, so I didn't even bother checking. Pretty sure all I did was give my head lice the best party of their life. Treatment 4. Actual medicine. Okay, so my final treatment, I went ahead and consulted with a pharmacist who recommended a specific type of shampoo. Apparently lice are becoming resistant to the chemicals we've been using for decades, which makes sense, that's just how evolution goes. So the pharmacist recommended a shampoo that uses dimeticone, or a type of silicone. If you love homeopathy and fear chemicals, then this is the stuff for you because it kills lice mechanically, rather than with chemicals that attack its biology. The dimeticone physically coats the lice and essentially makes it impossible for them to breathe, which kills them. It's less effective on eggs, but that's why you're supposed to continue the treatment over the course of several days, killing the new generation before it has a chance to lay eggs. So that's what I did. And let me tell you, this stuff stinks. It smells really strong, and you have to leave it in for several hours, which is not a huge selling point to be honest. But later that night, I rinsed it out and ran a comb through my hair and found more dead lice than I've found to date with any other treatment. I kept repeating the treatment and each day I was finding less and less live lice. This was clearly the most effective method I've tried yet. It's now been a week since my last treatment, and I'm happy to report that I appear to be 100% lice-free. This has been a horrible past few weeks, and one of the grossest challenges I've done. But I'll take some small satisfaction in knowing that I murdered an entire generation of lice while they were still virgins. Small payback, but I'll take it. Hey Hey you! That's right, you sitting there behind your computer or phone screen. Get up off your lazy keister. Get up on those feet, you bum, because today we're going to be finding out what happens when you don't get to sit for a whole week. The infographics office is as fond of reading about medical studies as you are, and when it comes to sitting or standing, it seems scientists can't decide on which will kill you first. So for the sake of our viewers, we decided to put our world-famous science team on the case to figure out just how bad standing can be. And no, it's not just because some of our staff saw a documentary on flamingos and thought to themselves, hey, what would it be like to just stand all day? We're doing real science here, folks. And to crack this nut, we're once more putting your favorite lab rat and our writer with the best medical insurance on the entire staff on the job. Day 1, no sitting for a week. I read the words over and over again in my inbox, trying to make them sink in. Is this even humanly possible? I guess it's my job to find out. Alright, so I immediately thought about how in the world to accomplish this. I went online to find out if there was a world record for standing. I found a site full of records set by average Joes. Things like, and no, I'm not making this up, longest time balancing a table tennis ball on a nose while standing, longest time to stand straight on someone's shoulders, and my personal favorite, largest group to sing happy birthday while standing on one foot. Apparently, you can just submit your own video proof to set a new record, and this record can be for literally anything someone else hasn't done before. By the way, this site appears to be quite popular with Indian people, who submitted like half the records. Way to go, India! You guys are the world record holders for setting world records, I guess. I found another site where world records for standing still were recorded. And incredibly, an Indian man, no surprise there, once stood perfectly still for an astonishing 35 hours and 22 minutes, stopping only due to an insect bite. It must have been one heck of an insect bite. I couldn't find any records for people actually standing though, just the standing still ones. I definitely don't plan on standing still. I've had my fill of lying under camouflage and trying to be as perfectly still as possible with bugs and reptiles crawling on you. I'll be living my normal life, just no sitting allowed. How I'm actually going to do this is another thing entirely. The rules are that I have to remain standing at all times, which includes sleep. And no, I can't cheat going from standing to laying down. I have to stay with my feet physically touching the ground the whole time. This is going to be insane, but I figured that the best thing to do will be to keep busy. Day 2. Alright, yesterday was the most exhausting day of my life, and honestly, I'm not sure if I can physically accomplish this entire challenge. My day started out normal enough, I guess. I got up out of bed and kissed sitting down goodbye for 7 days, then hopped in the shower. The girlfriend and I have this game now where I don't tell her what my new challenges are unless they're taking me out of the house, like to live in the woods or something, and instead she has to guess what it is based on my behavior. She's smart as a whip, that one. And the moment that I started eating my breakfast standing up, she guessed that I wasn't allowed to sit. She laughed and then asked me for how long, and her eyes kind of went wide. She said that she doesn't think that 7 days is humanly possible, and I kind of agreed with her. Then she asked how I would feel because of my physical issues due to service-related injuries, and I kind of shrugged it off. Thing is, she's right. Due to some pretty severe bone fractures and general wear and tear on the body, I don't have the stamina I used to, and my back and legs are prone to pretty bad aches and pains. I almost got a medical discharge after fracturing lower back and hip, but after a few weeks of recuperation I showed up at training wearing full kit and determined to prove that I didn't need to be discharged. It practically killed me, but I managed to convince superiors not to push a medical discharge. Maybe now it's clear why I'm so determined with these challenges and why I take them so seriously. I do not make a habit of quitting. So today I found out how hardwired we are to sit. I went throughout my day and kept having to remind myself not to sit whenever I saw a chair nearby. It was just sort of a reflex. And even when I went over to Panda Express nearby for lunch, I had to remind myself not to sit at a booth. I guess we really don't realize just how much sitting we do. Of course, I had to walk to that Panda Express because driving a car would mean sitting. I'm thinking though that I might buy one of those hoverboards and just bill it to infographics. Walking around all day is kind of exhausting. First day was rough, I'm not gonna lie. I'm in good shape, but standing all day is rough, especially when your back and hip is completely shot. Sleeping was interesting. I took inspiration from a documentary I saw on the International Space Station though. On the ISS, astronauts actually crawl inside a sleeping bag and sort of zip themselves up so they don't just float around in zero gravity. I don't know, I think if I was an astronaut, I'd love to sleep while floating. It must feel amazing, though I guess bumping into walls would be an issue. Anyways, I took a sleeping bag and cut 2 slots in the back, and I ran 550 cord, some of you might know it as parachute cord, through the 2 slots and then wrapped it from the top of the door to the bottom of the door. Then what I was left with was a sleeping bag securely fastened to the back of our bedroom door. Sleeping was as easy as sliding in and zipping it up. The 550 cord, wrapped several times from the bottom of the door to the top of the door, was more than secure enough to keep me up. The girlfriend had a difficult time adjusting to my sleeping arrangement though. She said that I looked like a man insect in a giant cocoon, and that in the dark it kind of really freaked her out to see me just hanging there. Also, she was worried that the cord would snap or something and I'd break my neck in the middle of the night, but I reassured her that 550 cord got its name from the minimum requirement of being able to hold at least 550 pounds. It was originally used in parachutes after all. I'm not gonna lie, sleeping standing up is probably a lot easier for horses and astronauts in zero-G. It was not pleasant at all, but luckily I was so tired from standing all day that I did manage to fall asleep. Lurching forward the entire time was incredibly uncomfortable though, and left me with a huge crick in my neck. So I managed to flip around inside my sleeping bag and end up in a slightly reclined position instead. That made sleeping easier, but in all seriousness, this is probably my top 3 worst sleeps of all time. It's a new day though, and I'm not looking forward to it. Day 3. Last night's sleep was likely worse than the first night. I managed to give the cord keeping my sleeping bag propped up a bit of slack, so I'm reclining more while staying up on my feet. But honestly, this is just the worst challenge ever. To add insult to injury, the girlfriend got up in the middle of the night for some water, and in her groggy, half-asleep state, she forgot I was tied to the back of the door. So when she came back in and the door barely budged open because of all my weight, she basically She-Hulked the door backwards and smacked me against the wall face first. Yeah, honestly, I'm hating this challenge. My second day of no sitting was worse than the first. I tried to keep myself busy, but my back is seriously starting to hurt, and so doing any work was out of the question. The one person who's ecstatic about this challenge is the dog, who got taken for like 12 walks today just so I could keep myself away from the temptation of sitting. The girlfriend and I had our date night yesterday, and I'm always determined to not let my challenges ruin it. I had to think about what in the world we could do with me not even being allowed to sit inside a car, and I got a brilliant idea. I dug up our old rollerblades that we haven't used in years and told her to throw them on. Then we rollerbladed down to the beach, taking our dog with us on the leash. We spent the entire evening going through an art crawl and then the food trucks on the beach, and then played our favorite game. We separate and one of us walks, or in this case rollerblades, far away from the other, then approaches and pretends we've never met. The object of the game is to try to pick up each other with the most ridiculous or outrageous pickup lines we can think of. We play this game everywhere, and typically this means there's an audience for our ridiculous pickup lines. One time we were at a very fancy lounge, and while I'd been away, a guy had tried buying her a drink only to have me come back, look her up and down and say, "Hey, was your dad a boxer? Because you're a knockout." Then she started laughing so hard she almost shot her appletini out of her nose, grabbed me by the collar of my shirt and kissed me, all while the poor guy looked completely baffled. By the way, tonight's winning line, it came from her rollerblading up and asking, "Are you Israeli? 'Cause you Israeli hot." I gotta admit, she's not as creative as I am at this game, but that one was damn good. Despite this ridiculous challenge, I still managed to make date night fun, and I'm kinda glad I wasn't allowed to sit in a car and drive us somewhere. It's been a while since we just went out without a particular destination in mind, and I really like the fact that we didn't have to be doing anything special for it to feel special. This morning I woke up with some pretty severe aches and pains. A lot of it I think is my body and old injuries, but a significant part of it is the act of just standing all the time. Sleep is damn near impossible, and I think if I hadn't had almost a decade's experience sleeping in the most uncomfortable places in the world, I wouldn't be able to manage more than an hour or two. If the military teaches you one thing, it's how to sleep anywhere at the drop of a hat. I'm not looking forward to a third day of this mess though. Day 4. Alright. I had to throw in the towel on this challenge. I believe that this is officially the first challenge I've quit on my own. I failed one other challenge before, but it wasn't my fault. True challenge fans will know exactly which one that is, by the way. I managed to power through my day, but it wasn't easy at all. The girlfriend could tell how much of a toll this standing up was taking on me, and she very sweetly tried to rub my shoulders and lower back throughout the day as much as she could. She told me that she can already feel knots forming on my back, and it's not surprising. Normally I had to follow a pretty strict yoga and stretching regime to keep my busted back and legs from aching and hurting, and obviously I'm not able to do that when I can't lay or sit. Honestly, I can deal with a terrible quality sleep in my very weird man-insect cocoon I jerry-rigged. It's the creaking aches and pains that make this unbearable. Maybe if I tried this when I was younger, before damn near a decade of lugging around almost 100 pounds on my back. I had an interpreter once tell me that Taliban fighters call American soldiers donkeys because of the ridiculous amount of gear we carry everywhere we go. I'll also admit that rollerblading for a few hours the day before was not as great an idea as I thought. That exhausted my legs, and while we had a blast on our impromptu date night, it severely drained my stamina for this stupid challenge. Also, do you have any idea how hard it is to put on and take off rollerblades when you can't sit? I had to hang on to the girlfriend the entire time so I wouldn't fall flat on my face. I'm not a fan of quitting anything, no matter how psychologically or physically hard, but sometime late last night my legs literally just quit on me. I got a horrible cramp in my left leg and my knee just buckled, sending me to the bottom of my sleeping bag cocoon. I got up, determined to keep going anyways after the cramp subsided, but the girlfriend had woken up and was really concerned. She told me no, she was pulling the plug on this, and then demanded I get into bed with her. I really did want to keep going. I probably take these dumb challenges too seriously, just like she always says, but it's important to me not to quit. She insisted, though, in the very stern way that she only ever does like once, maybe twice a year, with something she is not willing to compromise on. These things are almost always related to my health, safety, or well-being, because I guess I do have a habit of putting all three of those things in jeopardy. The only other time she's done it this year was a few months ago when I wanted to buy a full-size xenomorph from the movie Alien, and, well, in hindsight, I guess she was right. I mean, it was awesomely life-size too, and it stood over 7 feet tall, but I guess waking up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and running into that thing would likely lead to a heart attack. So I've failed my challenge, and the girlfriend's booked me a pretty intense massage therapy session with our local Thai massage place. I go from time to time for a deep tissue massage, and let me tell you, those little Thai ladies are absolutely brutal. If the CIA wants enhanced interrogation techniques, forget waterboarding. Just have these feisty little ladies go at the bodies of terrorists with their elbows, feet, and knees. It works though, and you may have to leave in a world of pain, but the next day, all the knots in your muscles are gone. What did I learn from my 3 days of standing up all day? Honestly, not much, other than the fact that it sucks exactly as much as it sounds it would. Maybe if I was younger and fresher, I could have gone the distance, but also it's surprising how hardwired we are to want to sit when we see a chair or a sofa. It's practically an instinct. If you fit, you sits. Also, eating your food while standing is just weird, though it beats the time I couldn't leave bed and had to eat everything lying down. At least you don't feel like you're choking to death with every bite. 0 out of 10. Would not repeat. Worst challenge ever. For more challenges and other great videos, click on the video here, or check out this video instead over here.